Chapter 521. The voice of the little Rakshasa could be heard clearly outside the void-reversing grand formation. Feng Lingling and his company were still fighting desperately, resorting to all sorts of methods to create a way out. Deafening explosions kept ringing out, but because of the isolation of the formation, the sound seemed to come from tens of millions of miles away and could not be heard clearly. As the formation repaired itself and resumed its normal operation, the last bit of sound disappeared completely. Dragging two bloody, broken legs, Wu Qi plunged into the dark abyss of the northern ocean with a twisted expression on his face. Wu Qi hastily took out several dozens of drops of Ganoderma immortal liquid and swallowed them. An enormous energy swept through his body, filling Wu Qi's body with a nearly endless life force. Countless tendons and muscles grew out from the broken parts of his legs, and together with the true body of heaven and earth scripture, Wu Qi's legs grew back at an incredible speed. Even in the dark abyss of the northern ocean, the strange purple mist still filled the void and filled every corner of it. As Wu Qi quietly exercised the foundation chapter of the true body of heaven and earth scripture, a dense purple mist rushed into Wu Qi's body. Nourished by the purple mist, the strength of his newly regenerated legs was raised at an incredible speed. Wu Qi could even hear popping noises coming from within his legs. It was the sound produced when the muscles, tendons, and bones in his legs were being compressed and tempered. Panting heavily, Wu Qi wiped off the sweat that trickled down from his forehead, then quickly glanced around with a pair of ghastly eyes. It was a huge pit with a diameter of 100 miles, plunging straight down to an unknown depth. It was filled with a very strong evil energy, and not even a single drop of seawater could be seen. All the seawater was kept out by the evil energy, and could not seep in at all. Some vague figures with vague faces and fleeting figures could be vaguely seen amidst the evil energy, with long trails of dark smoke trailing behind them. These were the evil spirits that had been bred by the rich evil energy in the dark abyss for countless years. They did not have any intelligence, and could only act on their most primitive instincts. They were fighting and devouring each other. Occasionally, a few Yin ghosts would flash past Wu Qi. Those Yin ghosts carried a terrible power that made Wu Qi tremble. Perhaps the strongest Yin ghosts here had a cultivation base far beyond that of ordinary gold immortals. However, as they were born in the dark abyss of the northern ocean, they could not travel freely without the evil Yin energy here. Otherwise, once they escaped to Pangu continent, it would be a catastrophe. Carefully hiding his aura, Wu Qi slid down the cliff of the bottomless abyss. He dared not provoke the Yin ghosts, which were bred by the Yin Qi. These evil creatures loved the hot blood and energy essence of living people the most. If they discovered the existence of Wu Qi, endless Yin ghosts would attack them, and even a gold immortal would die here. Even for immortals, this kind of natural despair was extremely dangerous. After slipping down the cliff for more than 10,000 miles, Wu Qi suddenly felt a sharp pain on his back. A few extremely sharp spikes had pierced through his body. Before his brain could react, Wu Qi's fleshly body, which had been tempered by the true body of heaven and earth scripture, had reacted first. His body leaned forward abruptly, and in the blink of an eye he was hundreds of feet away from the cliff, dodging the spikes. When he looked over his shoulder, he saw that the cliff, which measured about 300 to 400 miles in circumference, was suddenly wriggling. A strange creature, as thin as a palm and as hard as a rock, was slowly leaving the cliff and approaching Wu Qi. A few sharp needles, each about 3 feet long, poked out from the surface of the strange creature's body. They were only as thick as a strand of hair, and a large amount of sticky, yellow venom was spraying out from them at the moment. A pungent fishy smell came into Wu Qi's nostrils, and he nearly threw up because of it. Cold sweat broke out all over his body, and Wu Qi felt that his legs were trembling. Fortunately, his body reacted quickly, and he fled immediately after the needles pierced through his body. Otherwise, if the yellow venom seeped into his body, Wu Qi dared not to imagine what would happen to him now. Only heaven knew what kind of strange abilities the creatures bred in this natural despair had. If the venom of this strange creature could poison a primordial immortal to death, Wu Qi would believe it. He glared fiercely at the strange beast that was slowly approaching him, cursed under his breath, and continued to descend from the sky with a few blinks. He dared not to make a big fuss in the dark abyss of northern underworld. There were too many strange creatures and ghosts in this place, and if he was not careful, he would be killed. Therefore, he dared not to make a big fuss. Exercising the mystic technique found in Scroll of Stealing, Wu Qi kept diving deeper and deeper into the ground. 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles. In the end, Wu Qi had no idea how deep he had dived, and how many strange and bizarre creatures he had seen. Finally, he came to the bottom of the dark abyss of northern underworld. Carefully, he found a protruding rock on the cliff and hid himself there, then poked his head out and peered downward. Several tens of miles below him was the bottom of the dark abyss of northern underworld. Perhaps that was not the right way to put it, as this place should not be the real bottom of the dark abyss of northern underworld. It was just a place filled with extremely strong evil aura, which had condensed into a sticky, dark liquid, forming a black ocean that measured about 100 miles in diameter. Above this ocean formed from evil aura, a 9-headed serpent with a body length of over 10 miles was seen floating motionlessly on the surface of the water. The serpent had 9 ferocious and ugly heads, and each of them had their mouths wide open, looking up into the sky. From time to time, wisps of glinting dark mist would shoot out from their mouths. In the middle of the 9-headed serpent's body, there was a thick, tortoiseshell-like armor draped over its body. A platform measuring 1,000 feet in diameter was formed in the middle of the armor. The naked patriarch Miao Ying was seen sitting cross-legged on the platform, on the waist of a handsome man who had an evil face and was emanating an immense evil aura. Patriarch Miao Ying's eyes were fixed on the handsome man. Her body was coiled around his waist, and the man's yang object had sunk deep into her body. Both of them were intimately connected, and a pitch-black evil aura was flowing back and forth between them. A dark torrent was seen wheeling and wheeling under their skin, and from time to time, eerie ghost howls could be heard towering into the sky. With just one look at Patriarch Miao Ying, Wu Qi knew that the handsome man was the primordial immortal item she had crafted. Ordinary heaven immortal items looked like ordinary sabers, spears, swords, halberds, pots, bowls, ladles, and some other common objects, and they only relied on the power of the heaven and earth to unleash their might. Although gold immortal items still looked like ordinary objects, once they were unleashed, they could transform into all kinds of strange creatures, casting all kinds of magical spells, and using all kinds of powerful forces to attack their enemies. Primordial immortal items, on the other hand, were completely different from heaven immortal items and gold immortal items. Primordial immortal items were living creatures that were about the same level as primordial immortals. They had the appearance of humans, the overall strength of primordial immortals, and the incredible power. Only when a primordial immortal had fused all his spirit, energy, and soul into a primordial immortal item, and made love with it like Patriarch Miao Ying did, could he perfectly fuse his spirit, energy, and soul with the primordial immortal item, and only then could he wield the primordial immortal item with ease. It was just too difficult for a primordial immortal to obtain a suitable primordial immortal item. Because any primordial unity celestial weapon was equivalent to an independent primordial unity golden immortal, it was basically impossible to subdue a primordial unity celestial weapon crafted by someone else. A primordial immortal who owned a primordial immortal item was someone no one dared to provoke. It was because a primordial immortal item could at least double the overall strength of a primordial immortal, and it was equivalent to 2 primordial immortals joining hands to attack the enemy. Seeing that Patriarch Miao Ying was completely immersed in making love with the primordial immortal item, and had no idea what was happening in the outside world, Wu Qi could roughly guess that perhaps this was the first primordial immortal item Patriarch Miao Ying had crafted, and that was the reason why she would use such an unimaginable technique to craft it. In the Scroll of Stealing, there was no related technique on how to craft a primordial immortal item. In the era when Wu Qi inherited the Scroll of Stealing, most of the almighty experts in the world used spirit treasures that were birthed by the heaven and earth. Compared to natural spirit treasures, primordial immortal items were just treasures that were crafted later, and their quality and power were far inferior. It was not long after the primal chaos was created, and there were countless natural spirit treasures under the heaven. Who would not use the ready-made natural spirit treasures, and instead painstakingly craft a primordial immortal item? Wu Qi clicked his tongue in amazement as he looked at the strange shape between Patriarch Miao Ying and the primordial immortal item. Since Patriarch Miao Ying had used such a technique to craft an immortal item, what kind of technique did other primordial immortals use to craft an inanimate object that looked exactly like a living person? Placed right next to Patriarch Miao Ying was a set of black palace dress and a set of jewelry. All of them were glinting with a faint gleam, a clear indication that they were excellent treasures. Among them was a set of 3 exquisitely crafted rings of green, blue, and purple color, which should be storage magical treasures of the supreme grade. Apart from the palace dress and the jewelry, there was also a set of 7 black flying swords hovering around Patriarch Miao Ying, emanating a murderous aura. On each flying sword, there was a Taoist clad in a black robe sitting cross-legged. It was a set of gold immortal items of an extremely high grade. Most likely, the item spirits were crafted using the immortal souls of immortals. At the moment, they had manifested and formed a killing formation that reversed the Big Dipper to protect Patriarch Miao Ying. However, although they were gold immortal items, without Patriarch Miao Ying's control, they could easily kill any gold immortals below mid-grade, but would not be able to defend against the invasion of gold immortals of higher grade. If a primordial immortal of the same grade as Patriarch Miao Ying were to invade, the flying swords would not be able to protect her. However, for Wu Qi, the flying swords had a very strong offensive strength. Therefore, he dared not to get too close to Patriarch Miao Ying. After giving Patriarch Miao Ying a deep look, Wu Qi shifted all his attention to the 9-headed serpent. Different from what was recorded in the scroll of stealing, this 9-headed serpent formed from the innate evil energy of extreme Yin had grown a lot. According to the scroll of stealing, this 9-headed serpent in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean was only 3,000 feet long, but now, its length had exceeded 10 miles. The entrance to the land of 9-Negate-Yang was right at the anus of this 9-headed serpent. It was a place that no ordinary immortal would ever think of, let alone explore. Chapter 522. In the land of 9-Negate-Yang, the great serpent of 9 was born from the innate evil energy of extreme Yin. Since the birth of Pangu continent and the appearance of the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, this great serpent of 9 had begun to grow. From an egg bred by the evil energy of extreme Yin until it gradually hatched, this great serpent of 9 had never stopped growing. Every 360 periods of time, the great serpent of 9 would extract a tiny thread of the purest innate evil energy from the evil energy and fuse it into its body. Every 360 periods, the great serpent of 9 would grow half a centimeter in length. From this, one could tell how long this great serpent had spent to grow to its current length of 10 miles. It grew on the evil energy of extreme Yin, absorbed and digested it, and refined it into innate evil energy to nourish its body. Naturally, the useless impurities in the evil energy of extreme Yin had to be expelled from its body. Just like a real serpent, this great serpent of 9 had a mouth, internal organs, nerves, and muscles. Naturally, it also had a fecal orifice for excretion. The fecal orifice of all the living beings under the heaven was the filthiest part of their bodies. As for this great serpent of 9, it was easy to imagine how filthy it was when it absorbed, digested, and excreted the impurities. Any immortal with a normal mind would never get close to this great serpent, unless he was an almighty expert like Patriarch Miao Ying, who was forced to use the innate evil energy of extreme Yin to craft a primordial immortal item. If any other immortal were to get close to the great serpent, the evil energy would invade their body, turning them into filthy water and killing them instantly. Even an immortal with a mental problem would never go near the great serpent's fecal orifice after getting close to it. It was just like how a human would never jump into a septic tank to take a bath. Even an immortal with a mental disorder would not do such a perverted thing. Carefully, Wu Qi exercised an escape art. While Patriarch Miao-ing was not paying attention to him, he snuck closer to the great serpent's tail and came next to its fecal orifice. When he was still about 1 mile away from the orifice, an indescribable stench, which was tens of thousands of times more pungent than an old latrine pit, came rushing at him. The stench had almost condensed into a solid substance, turning into a pitch-black cloud of water vapor that covered the void. The pores all over Wu Qi's body tightened, and his vision suddenly darkened. He almost fainted from the stench. At that moment, Wu Qi had a deep admiration for the senior who passed him the scroll of stealing to him. What kind of spirit of exploration did it take for that senior to wander so close to the anus of the great serpent of Nine Yin, and even discover the path to the real land of Nine Yin Negate Yang? In this world, which great divinity would be bored to such an extent? Why did he come all the way here and enter such a filthy place? The great celestial emperor who sat high above the celestial court would never do that, nor would the Easternwood emperor and the others. Even the ghost kings and ghost saints of the ghost realm, who were widely acknowledged to be the most stupid and stupid, would never do that. The senior who passed the scroll of stealing to him was indeed a unique figure since the creation of the world. Not only did he come here for a stroll, but he also discovered such a top-secret thing. A faint purple mist rushed out of his body as Wu Qi quietly exercised the true body of heaven and earth scripture. A strong purple mist wrapped around his body, protecting him as he approached the great serpent of Nine Yin step by step. Fortunately, he had the true body of heaven and earth scripture. This cultivation technique only used the purple mist to temper the fleshly body, and it had a strong repelling effect on all other energies, such as evil energies. Otherwise, Wu Qi would have a hard time resisting the invasion of the stench even with the innate energy protecting him. Walking through the endless filthy air, Wu Qi's eyes were blinking, and a gush of acid was stuck in his throat, nearly making him throw it up. Countless filthy images flashed across his mind. It was as if he was rolling and crawling in all the filthy places in the world. The disgusting and filthy feeling made Wu Qi have an impulse to cut his body into pieces, then burn it into smoke with a raging fire. It was too damn filthy. This damned great serpent of Nine Yin. Wu Qi glared angrily at the great serpent, who was right in front of him. Fortunately, it was not strong enough to transform into its human form. According to the records and scroll of stealing, it had to grow to at least 36 miles long before it could give birth to its sentience, give birth to its life force, and transform into a living creature that could leave the dark abyss of Northern Ocean. To grow from 10 miles long to 36 miles long, it would take many, many years for this giant snake to fully mature. Wu Qi could not help but feel sorry for those humans and immortals who lived on Pangu continent many, many years later. If this great fellow managed to leave the dark abyss of Northern Ocean, then he would have to congratulate those mortals and immortals. Not to mention anything else. If this great serpent, which was formed from innate evil energies, accidentally excreted somewhere, the power would be more than enough to kill a gold immortal instantly. Finally, Wu Qi could not hold back the natural reaction of his body, and threw up a mouthful of acid into the distance. His whole body trembled, and he vomited big mouthfuls of bile out of his mouth. In the end, Wu Qi even coughed out a mouthful of blood. His body was convulsing, and his muscles were about to break. Even though he was protected by the purple mist drawn by the true body of heaven and earth scripture, the area around the anus of this great serpent was too filthy and stinky. You are amazing. How could you find such a place? Once again, Wu Qi had a deep admiration for the unknown senior who had inherited the scroll of stealing. While suppressing the discomfort in his body, Wu Qi exercised an escape art and rushed into the anus of the great serpent at the fastest speed. Immediately, a foul stench that was thousands of times more foul than before came rushing at him. Suddenly, countless cracks appeared on Wu Qi's body, and he was nearly disintegrated into nothingness by the foul stench. Blood spurted out from Wu Qi's eyes. The phoenix fire pouch burst out a large sheet of divine flame of order, which transformed into a purple and green flame and wrapped around his body, barely resisting the invasion of the foul stench. His body flashed forward, and with just a teleportation he had teleported himself 1 mile away. Suddenly, specks of white light appeared before his eyes. Without hesitation, he reached out his hand and pointed at one of the specks of white light. Then he cast a restrictive spell and pulled the speck of white light over, gripping it tightly in his hand. It was a little flower about the size of a thumb, shaped like a wine cup, with 5 tiny and thin white petals, emitting a faint white gleam. The flower was pure and white, and was emitting a faint fragrance. Wu Qi brought the flower to his nose and took a deep breath. The fragrance flowed through his entire body, and he could no longer sense the foul stench in the surroundings. As the saying goes, heaven never bars one's way out. No matter how hopeless the situation was, there would always be a slim chance of survival. This little white flower was the only chance of survival in this perilous place inside the anus of the great serpent. This flower had never appeared in the mortal world before, and therefore no one had ever given it a name. However, it grew in the filthiest place in the world, yet it was able to restrain the foul stench in the serpent's body. Not only that, this flower was also the only antidote that could cure the deadly poison in the serpent's fangs when it matured and transformed into a living creature. Amidst the endless foul stench, the little white flower was dotted like the stars in the night sky. At first glance, there were about 10,000 of them. Wu Qi placed the flower in his hand into his mouth, then kept casting one restrictive spell after another to gather all the little white flowers and put them into the black dragon spirit ring. He let out a complacent laugh. The effect of this little white flower was not only to detoxify the great serpent of 9 yin's poison. Since it could resist such a powerful filthy gas, it could also resist other miasma and poisonous gases. This was without a doubt. In the future, it was inevitable that Wu Qi would have to visit some perilous places, which were filled with natural poisonous miasma. With these little white flowers, he would have one more way to protect his life. Spitting out the flower from his mouth, Wu Qi looked at the beautiful flower, chuckled and said, "I'll give you a name, 9 5 petals lotus. You were born in the land of 9 negate yang, and you are untainted by the filth, like a lotus flower. This name suits you best." The little flower shook its head slightly. It seemed it had some intelligence, as it sensed Wu Qi's kindness. From now on, this strange little flower that could neutralize the dreadful venom of the great serpent finally had a name, 9 5 petals lotus. This was the best compliment for the fact that it was born in the filthy land of 9, yet it was untainted by any filth, and could even neutralize the deadly venom. With the protection of the 9 5 petals lotus, Wu Qi leisurely walked along the intestine of the great serpent. After walking for a few miles, a misty dark mist suddenly appeared in front of him, and a trace of ferocious and evil energy could be sensed from the mist. Wu Qi looked around, then conveniently performed an incantation gesture and transformed into a stream of earthy yellow energy, shooting into the dark mist. The dark mist rippled, and a twisting portal that looked like a whirlpool suddenly appeared, sucking the earthy yellow energy that Wu Qi had transformed into the portal. Wu Qi felt the world spinning around him, and the next moment, he was attacked by an endless stream of filthy energy. With the protection of the 9 5 petals lotus, Wu Qi managed to fend off this wave of filthy energy. After an unknown period of time, Wu Qi suddenly felt his body lightened, as he had arrived at a place that was emitting a strong and pure yang energy. It was a perfectly round cave, with countless thumb-sized, beehive-shaped holes on the smooth and clean stone walls. Wisps of colorless and shapeless pure yang energy, but when sensed by his divine will, they were constantly spraying out from these holes, gathering on a white stone lotus in the middle of the cave, which had a diameter of over 100 miles. It was a stone lotus with a diameter of about 1 mile, with 3 layers and a total of 108 petals. Right in the middle of the stamen was a stream of innate yang energy, which stood several miles tall and over 100 feet wide, twisting and turning like a great dragon. There was an eye-catching rune on every petal of the materialized lotus. It was this rune that had imprisoned this stream of innate yang energy, and as a result, it had not developed a spirit even though it had grown to such an extent. With the strength of this stream of innate yang energy, If it could develop a spirit, perhaps it would have long become a Xiantian immortal who possessed a very powerful divine ability and would never have the original appearance of a stream of energy. Looking at the stream of innate yang energy before him, Wu Qi sighed softly. This was the real land of 9 negate yang. The negate yang had cut off all acquired yang energy, but it had forced a trace of innate yang energy to grow here. At last, it had condensed into the stream of innate yang energy, which had truly given birth to all living things in the world, transformed into the 5 elements, and formed the innate aura of billions of living beings in the world. After working hard for so many years and making so many arrangements, he had finally obtained this innate yang energy. Wu Qi sighed softly. Without any hesitation, he released 10 innate nascent souls and sent them flying into the stream of innate yang energy. Chapter 523. The innate yang energy merged with his body, and together with the thread of innate yin energy Wu Qi had absorbed before, they formed into a perfect taiji pattern, slowly circulating in Wu Qi's 7 stealing heaven meridians and yin-yang spirit meridians. Silently, Wu Qi exercised the 7 foundation establishment technique, driving the 2 energies to circulate in his body over and over again. Wherever they went, all the innate energies of 5 elements were covered with a layer of hazy and turbid aura. Softly reciting the incantation and carefully thinking about the corresponding rune in his spiritual ocean, Wu Qi's body was emanating a vague aura, and a faint pressure that could make one feel uneasy. The 10 innate nascent souls, which were formed from his 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls, flew out of his body and wheeled around Wu Qi, following the innate taiji pattern perfectly. The surrounding natural energies kept rushing into Wu Qi's body, and when the innate yang energy and yin energy in his body reached an absolute balance, Wu Qi freed himself from the huge innate yang energy and hovered in the air in the cave. Silently absorbing the natural energies, Wu Qi circulated the energies in his meridians, strengthening the innate energies of 5 elements and the 2 innate yin and yang energies. When the speed of strengthening could no longer satisfy Wu Qi's needs, and when the surrounding natural energies were not enough for the cultivation technique, the Ganoderma horse and a great amount of Ganoderma immortal liquid flew out from Wu Qi's spiritual ocean, transforming into drops of sweet dew and pouring into Wu Qi's mouth. An enormous amount of natural energies rolled and rocked in his body, and the 7 innate energies in Wu Qi's body grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, they broke away from the 7 stealing heaven meridians in his arms and surged into other parts of his body. The inferno-hell demonic nascent soul that he had painstakingly cultivated all these years had disintegrated. The enormous power contained in the inferno-hell demonic nascent soul and all the inferno-hell fiend energies had been transformed into 7 innate energies, flowing back and forth in every meridian in Wu Qi's body. In the innate chaos, an almighty expert created the chaos, broke the primordial chaos, and from the chaos came yin and yang, which then split into the 4 phases and finally, the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, laying the foundation of all things in the world, creating the 3 realms and countless living beings. The principles in Wu Qi's body boiled like porridge. The innate energies of 5 elements gradually fused together, and with every innate energy that fused, Wu Qi's body became a little blurry, and the tissues in his body disintegrated a little. The disintegrated flesh and energy essence fused with the blurry innate energies, and the innate energies of 5 elements. The innate energies of 5 elements with the innate energies had lost their bright colors, turning grayish and white. The innate energies and the innate energies were, and the innate energies of Qi of Qi had was Qi and was Qi Wu. Because of the harmony between the 2 energies of yin and yang, the innate energies of 5 elements that had fused and clashed with each other had become extremely gentle, like a drop of milk falling into a puddle of water. The fusion was slow and gentle, unlike the collision of heavenly lightning and earthly fire, which would instantly blast Wu Qi into pieces. When the innate energies of 5 elements drilled into Wu Qi's internal organs, his internal organs began to tremble slightly. The energy essence of his internal organs was completely stimulated, turning into even more innate energies of 5 elements and gushing out. Gradually, Wu Qi's internal organs melted and crumbled. Turbid energies of 5 colors filled up his body, and on the surface of Wu Qi's body, a dazzling 5-colored light could be seen rippling out. When the innate energies of 5 elements had completely melted Wu Qi's internal organs and completely transformed them into innate energies, the 2 energies of yin and yang also joined in the miraculous change. When the innate energies of 5 elements were added into the turbid 5-colored energies, it was like 2 matches were thrown into a bucket of mixed oil. A violent vibration instantly spread out, disintegrating Wu Qi's muscles, bones, meridians, and blood vessels, turning them into turbid energies and merging into the ball of turbid energies. Gradually, the 7 foundation building technique changed into the next level, the 7 foundation elevating technique. As the name suggested, the 7 foundation building technique was to build the foundation. As the name suggested, the 7 foundation raising technique was to soar and transform. Except for the thin layer of human skin, all the tissues in Wu Qi's body had been transformed into a ball of turbid energies. From the innate 5 elements and the second stage of innate yin and yang, it reversed the transformation of the primordial world. In Wu Qi's body, it recreated the magnificent scene of the creation of the universe, reversing the chaos and transforming the 7 streams of innate energies into chaotic energies. This was the first step of the 7 foundation elevating technique. More than half of the Ganoderma fairy spirit liquid had been swallowed by Wu Qi. His body was now brimming with natural energy. In terms of quantity, it was enough to fight against a high-level heaven immortal. However, in terms of quality, how could a heaven immortal compare with the chaotic energies in Wu Qi's body? 10 innate nascent souls opened their mouths and laughed aloud at the same time. They transformed into 10 beams of light and quickly squeezed into Wu Qi's body. 10 loud explosions rang out in a row inside Wu Qi's body. 10 innate nascent souls disintegrated at the same time, transforming into 10 streams of very strong soul essence aura that seeped into the huge ball of chaotic energies. The human skin on Wu Qi's body opened its mouth and swallowed the whole Ganoderma fairy spirit liquid along with the Ganoderma horse. An enormous amount of natural energy exploded and was quickly absorbed by the chaotic energies, turning into torrential chaotic energies that swirled and swirled inside Wu Qi's human skin. Gradually, the enormous chaotic energies were compressed and transformed into an oval ball of air that was shaped like a chicken. However, the density of the ball of air was not enough, and the quantity was not enough. Even after a few attempts, it still failed to take the shape. A faint sigh was heard coming out from the ball of chaotic energies. Suddenly, the phoenix fire pouch hovering above Wu Qi's head disintegrated. The chaotic energies coiled around the phoenix fire pouch and transformed it into an enormous stream of chaotic energy. After that, the divine flame of order, which had grown and grown stronger, was devoured by the chaotic energies as well, transforming into an enormous stream of chaotic energy as well. After that, the enchanting skull's flag and the myriad spirits' white bone armor, the 2 upper-grade immortal items that Wu Qi had refined, had also returned to their original state, returning to the most primitive state of all matter, chaos. However, the natural energy transformed from these items was still not enough for Wu Qi to take the shape. The black dragon spirit ring opened its mouth at the right moment. All the several hundred immortal items Wu Qi had collected in Miao Ying Palace flew into Wu Qi's body and were transformed by the extremely aggressive chaotic energies. After that came the nether ocean dark gold copper that Wu Qi had collected, as well as the energy stones and medicinal herbs that Lao Ai had brought to Wu Qi, were all devoured by Wu Qi's chaotic energies and transformed into the source of everything. Even so, the chaotic energies in Wu Qi's body still could not take the shape, as the amount of natural energy required to form the innate chaotic spirit body was just too enormous. Wu Qi, who had lost his intellect and was acting purely on instinct, casually pointed his finger out. Immediately, several dozens of hazy chaotic energies rushed out of his body, interweaving into a large net and swallowing the several miles tall innate yang energy into his body. Gradually, the innate yang energy was ground down and transformed by the chaotic energies, turning into chaotic energy as well. Immediately after that, the chaotic energies rushed out and swallowed the huge stone lotus flower. After the stone lotus flower was swallowed by Wu Qi, the soul of the black dragon suddenly poked its head out from the black dragon spirit ring and howled at the top of its voice, "I can't eat anything else. You've promised me that you'll help me rebuild my dragon body. You can't burn the bridge after crossing it." The black dragon spirit ring's concern did not come true. A tiny stream of chaotic energy rushed out from Wu Qi's body and injected into the ring's body, then pushed it far away. Meanwhile, the spirit-breeding ring worn by Wu Qi was swallowed by the chaotic energy, along with the vast space inside, the countless food stored inside, and even the amount of qilin which Wu Qi robbed from the ring, were all devoured and transformed by the chaotic energy. Even the clump of innate earth element energy essence, which Wu Qi had once refined into the earth element dragon scale shield, and the source energy of the heavenly outfit of Gale were all devoured by the chaotic energy. After being replenished by so many items, the chaotic energy mass inside Wu Qi's body was finally filled up. A chicken-shaped energy mass took shape, and gradually, it was divided into distinct layers, such as eggshell, egg white, and egg yolk. The source of Wu Qi's soul was hidden in the deepest part of the energy mass, slowly absorbing and devouring the chaotic energy to evolve. In just 3 to 5 days, an embryo of a baby had taken shape in the energy mass, and it was changing at an astonishing speed. In just a short 18 days, the last piece of skin on Wu Qi's body broke soundlessly and was absorbed by the chaotic energy mass. Not long after that, the chaotic energy mass broke apart soundlessly, and a human figure, standing 8 feet tall and looking exactly the same as Wu Qi, appeared in the cave. The human figure was neither muscular nor skinny. Everything about him was just right, and vaguely in line with the Tao of balance of heaven and earth. His long hair was black at first glance, but upon a closer look, it seemed to contain countless colors, hanging loosely behind his back, giving him a very profound and mysterious look. Chaotic airflows were darting in and out of his body. His body structure was exactly the same as that of a human, but its color was hazy and flickering with countless starlight. Upon a closer look, one could vaguely see countless marks of the great Tao in the depths of his fleshly body. In his spiritual ocean, the dark Yin soul captivation, which had troubled Wu Qi for several years, was easily devoured by the chaotic airflow, leaving nothing behind. Amidst the empty spiritual ocean, a chaotic divine soul sat lazily on a clump of chaotic airflow, stretching its back and yawning. The innate chaotic spirit body was formed, and the innate chaotic divine soul was born. Suddenly, Wu Qi opened his eyes and let out a wild laugh. With a shake of his body, the surrounding spiritual energy rushed into his body. At the same time, he began to cultivate the Song of Gale, the Inferno Hell Fiend scripture, the Dark Yin Water scripture, the Inaction Returning scripture, and all the other scriptures he had cultivated in the past. No matter what cultivation technique he cultivated, his body would always produce the same chaotic aura. However, as long as he cultivated the divine ability of a certain cultivation technique, he could easily use the chaotic aura to simulate all the mysteries of that cultivation technique. For a moment, Wu Qi was surrounded by raging green wind, rolling black fiend aura, piercing cold air of extreme Yin, and layers of watery clouds. He was surrounded by all sorts of marvelous phenomena. As his mind worked, there would be one nascent soul in his body, and at other times, several nascent souls would fly around randomly. Sometimes, these nascent souls would disintegrate into nothingness at the same time. Laughing, Wu Qi sensed the trace of Gale bloodline in his chaotic spirit body. With a twist of his body, he suddenly transformed into a pure-blooded Gale. However, his body was only several tens of feet tall, and at first glance, he looked like a fledgling that had just hatched from an egg. Wonderful! This is the chaotic spirit body. As long as I can obtain a trace of the bloodline of a divine beast, I will be able to transform into countless divine beasts under the heavens. Sensing the enormous godly power of Gale in his body, Wu Qi could not help but burst into laughter. With a flash, he transformed back into his human form. Wu Qi twisted his body, exercising the true body of heaven and earth scripture to crazily absorb the mysterious purple qi around him. An enormous amount of purple qi rolled and surged into Wu Qi's body like a tidal wave. The newly born chaotic spirit body, which was not much stronger than an ordinary human being, began to strengthen rapidly. From the Jin Dan stage, to the nascent soul stage, to the nascent divinity stage. In the blink of an eye, the strength of Wu Qi's body had broken through to the level of a 30th tier heaven immortal. The powerful physical strength mixed with the endless chaotic energy coursed through his body. Wu Qi had never felt so good before. A faint dragon roar was heard, as a black dragon about the size of a loach flew toward Wu Qi, shaking its head. Ao Buzan greets Master. Chapter 524. With astonishment, Wu Qi looked at the black dragon, who looked like he was born with a malnourished body, the size of a loach, and who did not even have any scales on his body. Ao Buzan? You are the black dragon spirit ring? Ao Buzan nodded while wagging his head and wagging his tail. Then he nodded 3 times at Wu Qi as a greeting, then said happily, "Yes, I am Ao Buzan. Fortunately, Master has given me a stream of chaotic energy, which helped me dissolve the body of a spirit item and reforge the body of a dragon. With the help of Master's energy essence and chaotic energy, I have formed the body of a chaotic black dragon. My future is limitless, and it is all thanks to Master's blessing." Grabbing Ao Buzan's tail and shaking it, Wu Qi found that he was indeed a living little black dragon. Feeling worried, he said, "All right, you have formed the body of a chaotic black dragon, and this is a happy occasion for you. But what about my storage rings?" Ao Buzan was taken aback. Then he bowed and nodded at Wu Qi with a flattering smile and said, "Master's power is limitless, and your divine abilities are boundless. It is just a storage ring. Whether it is through swindling or simply robbing, you can easily get a few storage rings. I have been following Master for many years, and I have seen many miracles of Master. This little thing is nothing to me." Wu Qi flicked Ao Buzan's head again, then threw him on his shoulder. With a sway of his body, he transformed into a vague figure and walked out of the cave. The filthy energy in the great serpent of 9 Yin's abdomen was still very strong, especially near the anus of the serpent, where the filthy energy was thousands of times denser than in other places. However, as both Wu Qi and Ao Buzan had transformed into their chaotic bodies, any filthy energy that approached their bodies would be dissolved and transformed by the chaotic energy. As long as the great serpent of 9 Yin did not intentionally attack them with the filthy energy, with their current cultivation base, they could not be hurt by the natural filthy energy. Walking slowly in the great serpent of 9 Yin's abdomen, Wu Qi was sensing the connection between him and Ao Buzan. Just as Ao Buzan had said, it was a thread of chaotic energy that Wu Qi had separated from Ao Buzan and a part of his own energy essence that had reconstructed Ao Buzan's fleshly body. However, as the energy given to Ao Buzan was too weak, he had shrunk to the size of a loach. In the future, Ao Buzan would have to rely on his own cultivation and food in order to grow stronger. That was his personal problem. As his fleshly body was reconstructed by relying on Wu Qi's natal energy essence, Ao Buzan and Wu Qi had faintly developed a sense of intimacy, as if they were connected by flesh and blood. His nascent divinity was also under Wu Qi's control. Therefore, as soon as Ao Buzan reconstructed his fleshly body, he immediately acknowledged Wu Qi as his master. This was the common sense in the world of immortal cultivators. After figuring out the ins and outs of Ao Buzan, although Wu Qi felt it was a pity that the Black Dragon Spirit Ring did not have a huge storage space, he was more delighted that he now had another good helper by his side. Perhaps Ao Buzan was a little weak now, but his future was boundless. With the body of chaotic Black Dragon, he was qualified to break through to the realm of primordial immortal. But it all depended on Ao Buzan's own fate. After walking out of the great serpent of 9 Yin's body, Wu Qi stood on the tip of its tail, looking at Patriarch Miao Ying, who was a few miles away, fully focused on crafting a primordial immortal item. She could not move her body at all, as all her spirit, energy, and soul were gathered inside her body, and did not have any reaction to the outside world. Suddenly, Wu Qi sighed and said, "A fat sheep is right in front of me. If I don't rob her, I'll never be satisfied." Rolling his eyes, Aobuzin chuckled and said, "Not only will I rob her of her wealth, but I can also rob her of her body as well. That will be the happiest thing in life." Wu Qi was struck dumb. Hastily, he turned to look at Aobuzin, who was staring at Wu Qi with shifty eyes and giggling. Twitching his lips, Wu Qi could not help but wonder how Aobuzin ended up being made into a storage ring in those years. After all, dragons were one of the most powerful races in all the heavenly realms, and among all the dragons, they were the most violent, the most united, and the most fond of fighting and killing with others. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would want to become enemies with a member of the Black Dragon race, let alone making a storage ring out of a member of the Black Dragon race. "You like women very much?" Wu Qi was doubtful, so he played along with Aobuzin and asked. Saliva was dripping down from the corner of Aobuzin's mouth as he stared blankly at Patriarch Miao Ying. Something had already protruded from his lower abdomen. He chuckled and said in a low voice, "Master, you are wise. As long as it is a beautiful female, be it a dragon, a phoenix, a peacock, or a fox, as long as she is pleasing to the eye, this little dragon will be very interested in her. In those years, with just a single dragon whip, I've subdued countless beautiful girls from different groups." Aobuzin spoke complacently. "Do you still remember how you died?" Wu Qi asked coldly. Aobuzin laughed and said, "After my fleshly body was reforged by Master, my memory was suddenly restored. Didn't I just peeped on the granddaughter of Western White Emperor taking a bath, and was skinned, pulled out my tendons, and made into a storage ring?" Suddenly, Aobuzin shuddered, grimacing in pain as he curled up into a ball. He stared at Wu Qi with a pitiful expression, wailing in a low voice, "Master, if you have time, you must avenge this little dragon. Western White Emperor will not provoke him, and will capture his granddaughter alive. Master, you can enjoy her first, and then let this little dragon have a taste of her. After that, I'll whip her for 300 years. This little dragon will finally vent his anger. Damn it, this Aobuzin is actually a lascivious dragon." Wu Qi stretched out his hand, wanting to grab Aobuzin and throw him as far away as he could. But when he thought about the past few years, this guy had been following him since he was just a storage ring, and they had some feelings for each other. Wu Qi was reluctant to do it. With a wry smile, Wu Qi gritted his teeth and scolded, "If you dare to mess around again, I'll give you a crack, and it'll be just right for you to soak in wine." Aobuzin's 4 claws hurriedly covered his lower body, and he said to Wu Qi in horror, "Master, this little dragon's body is small now. Even if I crack it, it won't be enough to soak in wine. If Master needs it, this little dragon can point out a few places where the corpses of our ancestors are kept. Their objects are big, and you can crack them as many times as you want." Wu Qi was so angry that his hands and feet were numb. In such a short time, Wu Qi had seen through the true face of Aobuzin. This was indeed a lascivious dragon, and a lascivious dragon who would even betray his ancestors. But were there really so many corpses of dragons kept? Well, Wu Qi was currently lacking a convenient magical weapon, and the corpses of dragons were the best material for crafting magical weapons. Wu Qi blinked his eyes, and Aobuzin was also blinking at Wu Qi with a sneaky look. The two of them glanced at each other, then abruptly let out the same creepy chuckle. Aobuzin rubbed his front claws, lowered his voice and said carefully, "If Master wants, this little dragon can lead the way. But how about giving this little dragon some benefits? TSK, after devouring the flesh and blood of those ancestors, this little dragon can also grow up quickly, and then it can help Master fight against the enemy." Twisting his loach-sized body, Aobuzin lamented, "Now that this little dragon is so small, even if Master uses this little dragon as a mount, it won't look cool, right?" "As a mount? Using a black dragon as a mount?" Wu Qi's eyes lit up, and he patted Aobuzin hard. "Great, this is a good idea. In the future, Wherever I go, I will rely on you. Well, first, I will think of a way to let you grow a little bigger. With your current appearance, I can easily trample you to death. How can you be a mount? Aobuzan had just forged the body of a chaotic black dragon. Although his aptitude was excellent, he had not started cultivating yet. His physical strength was not much different from that of an ordinary demon beast, and in the hands of an immortal, he could really be trampled to death. Wu Qi also felt that it was time for him to improve his overall strength. After giving Patriarch Miao Ying a glance, Wu Qi sighed and shook his head. Then, he transformed into a blurry figure and left with Aobuzan. Although Patriarch Miao Ying could not fight back, her set of 7 immortal swords was too strong of a threat. With his current cultivation base, how could Wu Qi dare to provoke her? Aobuzan sighed as well. Standing on Wu Qi's shoulder, he turned his head to look at Patriarch Miao Ying's curvaceous body, and the thing in his lower body rose once again. The dark abyss of the Northern Ocean was sealed by Patriarch Miao Ying with a mighty divine ability, and all teleportation techniques and escape techniques were useless here. Therefore, Wu Qi could only hide behind a boulder near the minor Rakshasa's void-reversing and heart-killing grand formation, carefully waiting for Patriarch Miao Ying to come out from her secluded cultivation. In the cave of pure yang, it only took him tens of days to form his innate chaotic spirit body. After waiting for a few more days, he heard a long cry coming from down below, followed by Patriarch Miao Ying's laughter. "Wonderful! My precious, you have vaguely developed your divine sense. Just wait for me to fully awaken your divine sense and help you form your true soul. Then, you will have taken your initial form. Ehe, with you, I'll definitely teach that bitch a lesson." Not long after that, a clump of dark light shot up into the sky from the bottom of the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean. The complacent Patriarch Miao Ying did not even give the surroundings a second glance. With a casual palm strike, she broke the minor Rakshasa's void-reversing and heart-killing grand formation, then released a vast amount of fiend energy and soared into the sky. This was the power that Patriarch Miao Ying should have when she came out from her secluded cultivation. First, she released the fiend energy to inform all her disciples, asking them to serve her carefully. After that, she would return to Miao Ying Palace to enjoy the offerings from her disciples. Right at the moment when Patriarch Miao Ying broke the formation and released the fiend energy, Wu Qi carefully shrunk his body, transforming into a tiny wisp of dust together with Aobuzan. Together with the fiend energy, they rushed out of the formation and were sent to a faraway place. Patriarch Miao Ying was too arrogant. Not even in her wildest dreams did she expect that there would be someone who dared to invade this place. As she was in a secluded cultivation to craft a primordial immortal item, she had consumed all her spirit, energy, and spirit. Therefore, she did not notice the existence of Wu Qi and Aobuzan, and only then did she carefully exercise an escape art and leave the Northern Ocean. After being pushed thousands of miles away by the fiend energy, he dared not to make too much noise. Instead, he brought Aobuzan to the edge of the Northern Ocean along the water, then carefully exercised an escape art and escaped from the Northern Ocean. After that, Wu Qi dared not to stay any longer. He exercised the acquired magnetic sword escape art, and with all his strength, he transformed into a beam of dark light and fled from the Northern Ocean. The escape lasted for over 3 months. When Wu Qi was millions of miles away from the Northern Ocean, he breathed out a sigh of relief and stopped before a lofty mountain. Right after he stopped, a man and a woman came out from behind a rock. The man cried out sternly, "Junior, hand over all the energy stones and immortal stones you have, and I'll spare your life." Wu Qi raised his head and was taken aback. Who else could this man be but Reverend Liang? Chapter 525. Upon seeing Reverend Liang, Wu Qi's first reaction was to turn and flee. But when he thought about the huge gap between his overall strength and that of a gold immortal, Wu Qi immediately gave up the idea. After that, he pondered over the fact that he had plotted against Reverend Liang and observed his current aura, which made him feel more confident. Reverend Liang's aura was so weak that it was even weaker than that of an ordinary heaven immortal. His face was pale and dark, and the exposed skin on his palms was devoid of blood. On the contrary, there was a strong shade of green hiding under his skin. At the sight of this shade of green, Wu Qi knew that Reverend Li Yang had fallen into his trap. The spirit fruits served to Reverend Li Yang and the other immortals of Green City in the Great Hall of Greenwood Mountain were all the best ones carefully selected by Wu Qi. There was no problem in taking them alone, as they would provide a great supplement to one's energy. Even if 3 to 5 of them were eaten together, there would not be any danger. But the spirit fruits were, after all, medicinal ingredients. If over 30 spirit fruits were consumed in a certain order, and then catalyzed with 3 spirit wines brewed from specific spirit herbs, they would immediately turn into a poison that could corrode one's bones and intestines. Even a gold immortal would have his immortal energy slowly depleted, and his fleshly body gradually corroded. The poison came from the art of gu, inherited from Princess Zhang Li's bloodline. It was the favorite method of the ancient humans with the bloodline of the demigods to kill people without leaving a trace, and only a few immortals today knew about it. There was no way to guard against it, and unless one knew the relationship between all spirit herbs and spirit fruits, one would definitely fall into the trap. Apart from the descendants of the ancient gods who had formed their true bodies from the great Tao of heaven and earth, who inherited the most original knowledge of the heaven and earth, and who were born with the knowledge of the root and fruit of all things under the heaven, no other immortals, apart from the existences known as divine immortals in the legends, could possibly know about these ingenious tricks. In the Grand Hall of Greenwood Mountain, Reverend Li Yang and the other immortals of Green City were having a merry banquet. They had eaten countless spirit fruits and drunk countless spirit wines. Those who were in charge of the banquet were Shui Xen and Shui Yi, the 2 celestial fiend puppets Wu Qi had transformed into. With this convenient condition, coupled with the rich resources on Pangu continent, Wu Qi could easily send the poison of the lover's tears heartbroken lure into the stomachs of Reverend Li Yang and the others. At first, when Reverend Li Yang and the others were poisoned, they only felt that their immortal energy was weakened and their bodies were weak. After being chased by Feng Lingling, and the joint attack from Goddess Miao Xian and King Baishan, Reverend Li Yang had consumed a great deal of his blood essence and energy essence. The poison of the lover's tears heartbreaking poison had gradually taken effect, seeping into his body like the tears of a lover, intertwining with his body and eventually turning into the deadly poison of the heartbreaking poison. It had been more than 3 months since Reverend Li Yang was poisoned. The poison had coiled up in his body, fusing with his immortal energy and blood essence. With the overall strength of a 7th-tier gold immortal, it was impossible for him to expel the poison. At the moment, Reverend Li Yang was a paper tiger, and Wu Qi could kill him with ease. But the lady in white standing next to Reverend Li Yang was a little tricky. The white-clothed woman had a head full of thick and beautiful hair. She tied her hair into a complicated bun with 3 to 5 layers, which looked like a mountain range. She wore 17 or 18 butterfly hair ornaments carved from jade. When she moved, the hair ornaments flashed, and those butterflies seemed to be fluttering in the air. She was tall and slender, and had a beautiful face. Apart from the red vein in the center of her brows, which gave off a fearsome and ruthless aura, she looked like a gentle and beautiful lady. She followed behind Reverend Li Yang like a willow branch drifting in the wind. Timidly, she raised her head slightly and stole glances at Wu Qi from the corner of her eyes. Every move she made was as gentle as water. She looked so delicate and beautiful, like a beautiful lady with a graceful bearing. But when Wu Qi exercised the mystic eyes of universe, he saw a faint golden halo hovering around her. His heart skipped a beat. The lady had the cultivation base of a gold immortal. Although she was severely wounded, which caused her immortal body to be unstable, and caused the immortal energy in her body to keep spreading out of her body, which gave rise to the golden halo, she was indeed a gold immortal. Judging from her appearance and the way she walked, although she was severely wounded, she had not reached the point where she could not fight back. As long as she was a gold immortal, and as long as she still had the strength to fight back, Wu Qi would never dare to do anything in front of her. Slowly raising both hands, Wu Qi swayed his body and said to Reverend Li Yang and the lady with a wry smile on his face, "Seniors, I'm Reverend Black Dragon, and I have nothing valuable with me. Just half a month ago, I was robbed and barely escaped with my life. I don't even have a storage bag with me, let alone energy stones and immortal stones. The chaotic energy in his body stirred as Wu Qi formed a nascent soul in his dantian. The unique aura of a nascent soul cultivator slowly seeped out of his body. Wu Qi could clearly see the expression of Reverend Liang and the lady lighten up, and both of them breathed out a sigh of relief at the same time. The lady took a step forward and said in a weak voice, "Fellow Taoist, I'm Xian Dai, and this is my husband, Liang. We were severely wounded by a formidable enemy, and all our magical treasures were destroyed, while all our spirit pills and energy stones were used up." She sighed softly and said in a soft voice, "Please forgive me if I was rude just now, fellow Taoist." Reverend Liang's face turned cold as he cried out unhappily, "Xian Dai, why are you wasting your breath on him? He is just a nascent soul cultivator, a man who is even weaker than an ant." Before he could finish his words, Xian Dai gently pulled his arm. Reverend Liang shut his mouth immediately, his eyelids drooping and not saying another word. Suddenly, Wu Qi recalled what Lady Dark Goldwater had told him many years ago. Her only friend, Fairy Xian Dai, had poisoned her tea with Xiang Lu's saliva. After that, Reverend Liang and Fairy Xian Dai took the opportunity when Lady Dark Goldwater was suffering from a deadly poison and attacked her, destroying her soul and killing her. She was left with only a broken soul that was lingering on with the help of a spirit item. So, this lady in white, who looked so delicate and pitiful, was the cruel and merciless Fairy Xian Dai, who had brazenly betrayed her best friend. Wu Qi was cursing in his mind, and he was getting really angry. Why was he so unlucky? He had chosen a random direction to flee in, and yet, he still bumped into Reverend Liang, the adulterous couple. Pangu Continent was a vast and boundless place, and yet, he still bumped into them while running aimlessly. Wu Qi began to wonder if he was destined to meet them. Xian Dai moved her fingers slightly, unleashing a stream of white mist that wheeled a few times around Wu Qi at high speed, running through his body. "Fellow Taoist Black Dragon is indeed a man of his word, and you have nothing valuable with you." She sighed softly. Xian Dai sighed softly, then took a few steps forward, trembling as she bent her knees and gave Wu Qi a graceful and beautiful bow. She raised her eyelids slightly and said to Wu Qi in a tender voice, "Fellow Taoist, both of us have encountered a great calamity, and our cultivation base is almost depleted. Our enemies are now hunting us everywhere. Those enemies are quite powerful, and if we are captured alive by them, I'm afraid we will suffer a fate worse than death." 2 lines of tears rolled down Xian Dai's cheeks as she wept in a low voice. "If fellow Taoist is cruel enough to do something bad to us, we will be doomed if we help you." Reverend Liang's eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. Wu Qi blinked his eyes as he tried to figure out Xian Dai's intention. Reverend Liang was crippled, but at least Xian Dai still had the strength to launch one more attack. Why was she acting like a little girl? What puzzled Wu Qi the most was that when Reverend Liang came to Pangu Continent, he did not see Fairy Xian Dai. But now, she was following him. How did they get together? Could it be that Xian Dai possessed a mighty divine ability and magic power that allowed her to travel between Pangu Continent and outer heavenly realms in a very short time? That was impossible. A primordial immortal might have such a divine ability and magic power, but just like Reverend Liang, Xian Dai was only a 7th-tier gold immortal. Ao Buzan tilted his head, drooling as he stared at Xian Dai, who was standing trembling in midair. His penis had long grown out of his crotch. After a long while, Ao Buzan wiped the drool off his face, clenched his front claws into fists, and stared angrily at the sky. He murmured under his breath, "What a delicious piece of meat, but I can't eat it. I hate it, I hate it. I need to work harder in my cultivation, eat harder, and at least grow to the size of an ordinary man. Otherwise, how many beautiful girls will be heartbroken because they can't get my love?" Gently flicking the penis on his back claw, Ao Buzan clenched his jaws and said, "My good brother, bear with it for a while longer. I'll definitely let you feast on me in 3 to 5 years, or 5 to 6 months at the earliest, and let you regain your former glory. Excellent. My dragon spear has been dyed with blood, and wherever this treasure passes, it will be nowhere to be found. Wu Qi stared blankly at Xiandai for a while, then suddenly bowed deeply and said, Fairy Xiandai, why do you say that? I'm the most passionate person in helping others. Now that you and your wife are in trouble, how can I not help you? If there is anything that I can do, please tell me. Fairy Xiandai smiled faintly as she gave Ao Buzin, who was lying on Wu Qi's shoulder, a glance. For a moment, she looked very charming. Ao Buzin stared blankly at Fairy Xiandai. Lying on top of Wu Qi's shoulder like a dead snake, his lower body arched up in a bizarre manner, while a penis that looked like a wolf poked viciously on Wu Qi's shoulder. With a backhand, Wu Qi forcefully slapped Ao Buzin's body. Ao Buzin howled miserably as he rolled away from Wu Qi's shoulder with 4 claws, holding his lower body. Xiandai giggled, then pointed her finger at Ao Buzin and said, What an interesting little dragon. Could it be that fellow Taoist black dragon got his Taoist name from this little black dragon? Too bad, this black dragon is still very young. I'm afraid he will need several tens of thousands of years of arduous cultivation before he can grow into a real dragon. Gnashing his teeth, Ao Buzin poked half of his head out from the bushes on the ground, trying to peek under Xiandai's skirt. Little girl, just you wait, he murmured vaguely. It won't be long before I'll let you know the true meaning of the divine dragon spear. Wu Qi stepped on Ao Buzin's body and said in a deep voice, What do you need from me, Fairy Xiandai? Xiandai smiled faintly and said in a soft and charming voice, I'm just in urgent need of some energy stones. She sighed faintly, then asked Wu Qi with a serious expression, Fellow Taoist, can you rob some energy stones for me? Chapter 526. The barren mountain where Wu Qi bumped into Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai was the territory of Mu Province, a 9th-grade province in Diyu. Mu Province was a 9th-grade province that was newly established less than 100 years ago. It was a vast province, but its total population was less than 10 million. Apart from the administrative center of Mu Province, which had a population of over 1 million, the other sparsely populated cities had at most 100,000 people. Most of the people lived in villages. It was a typical lower-grade province with a vast territory but a sparsely populated population. But, just like the other provinces in Diyu, the natural resources here were extremely rich. 300 miles to the east of this barren mountain was a small city called the 6 Rivers City. 6 great rivers meandered through the city, converging into a large lake right next to the city. Then, they converged into a great river that flowed eastward. The 6 Rivers City was built on a plain beside the Great Lake. The soil was very fertile, and there were 50 to 60,000 people living in the city. Outside the city, there were nearly 100 small villages, and over 90% of the people lived by farming. Wu Qi was bringing Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai along the main road towards the 6 Rivers City. Wu Qi told Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai that with their status, and with Fairy Xiandai's beauty, they should not suffer in the wilderness. They should go to the city and find a comfortable residence, with dozens of serving maids serving them attentively. Both Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai were pampered people, and the 3 months of wandering and fleeing from place to place had long become unbearable for them. Both of them could not help but be tempted by Wu Qi's words. On top of that, as both of them were severely wounded, they needed a better environment to recuperate. Therefore, they obeyed Wu Qi's suggestion and followed him to the 6 Rivers City. Wu Qi also told them that there would not be too many immortal cultivators passing by in the wilderness of a 9th-grade province. Therefore, there was no point in robbing them. Rather than trying his luck by robbing passers-by cultivators, he might as well rob the officials of the 6 Rivers City. The provinces, counties, cities, and towns of the Diyu dynasty would collect a large number of tributes and send them to the Diyu imperial family every few years. Therefore, the treasury of the 6 Rivers City would definitely contain the spirit stones, immortal stones, and other items that they lacked. Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai kept nodding and cheering at his words. They knew that as long as Wu Qi's life was in their hands, They were not afraid that a mere nascent soul cultivator could do anything to him. Therefore, they let Wu Qi do whatever he wanted. Along the way to the Six Rivers City, Wu Qi curiously glanced at the surrounding scenery. 6 great rivers flowed into the lake next to the Six Rivers City from different places. The city was located right next to the lake, less than 3 miles away from the lake. Fertile farmlands could be seen everywhere outside the city. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, the fertile soil of the farmlands could be seen crisscrossing with crisscrossing paths. Over 100 small villages could be seen scattered across the land, and a large number of farmers were working in the fields. Wherever the wind blew, the rice grains that were as tall as a man's chest were tossing and turning into waves that were half yellow and half green. A refreshing aroma of crops was lingering around him. Wu Qi took a deep breath and felt refreshed. Hundreds of longbow men were seen running across the farmlands in the distance, pulling plows and plowing the land and stirring up the soil. A large group of farmers were following behind them, sowing seeds in the plowed fields. It was a busy scene. Thousands of feathermen were flying high up in the sky, wheeling and dancing excitedly in the sky. Some of them were even playing flutes in the sky. The shrill flute music scared the birds away from them. With these feathermen in charge of flying in the sky, not a single bird dared to rush into the farmlands to peck at the rice grains. The mayor of the Six Rivers City had made the best use of his men and had a good overall plan. But what made Wu Qi feel strange was that, apart from these people who were working in the fields, there were always small groups of young men who were practicing their punches and kicks with a serious look on their faces. These young men threw punches like gusts of wind, shaking the air and making loud popping noises. Once they stomped their feet on the ground, Wu Qi could clearly see several inches tall soil waves rising from under their feet. Each stomp carried at least tens of thousands of kilograms of force. Exercising the true body of heaven and earth scripture, Wu Qi injected a thread of purple mist into his mystic eyes of universe and looked at those young men. What he saw shocked Wu Qi. These were small groups of young men, consisting of at most 20 men, and at least 5 to 6 men. Wisps of purple mist were constantly being injected into their bodies. Obviously, they were also practicing some special cultivation technique of the human race, such as the true body of heaven and earth scripture. Along the way, there were at least 10,000 young men training outside the Six Rivers City. This was definitely not a military force that a small city like the Six Rivers City should have. Wu Qi had a general understanding of the military system of the Diyu dynasty. In a large province like the Zhong province, the ratio of soldiers to ordinary people was about 1 to 1,000. In those lower-grade provinces, where the population was sparsely populated and the income was low, the ratio of soldiers to ordinary people was usually more than 1 to 1,000. There were even cases where only 1 soldier was recruited for every 5 to 6,000 people. After all, soldiers who practiced the true body of heaven and earth scripture were different from ordinary people. Every single one of them had the strength to carry a mountain and lift a cauldron. When they reached a certain level of cultivation, it was normal for them to be able to topple mountains and overturn seas. Therefore, a very small number of soldiers could maintain the peace of an area and fight against disasters like wild beasts. The total population of the Six Rivers City, plus the population of over 100 villages outside the city, was about 200,000. With such a small population, nearly 10,000 soldiers were being trained, absorbing the purple mist and cultivating themselves. A ratio of 1 to 20 soldiers was definitely not an official policy of the Diyu dynasty. Unless the city lord of the Six Rivers City was plotting a rebellion, there was no need for him to recruit such a huge ratio of soldiers. But then again, with just 10,000 soldiers, they were planning to start a rebellion in the Diyu dynasty? Was this a joke? Looking at the soldiers who were training with astonishment, Wu Qi felt that the entire Six Rivers City was shrouded in a bizarre atmosphere. Reverend Liang and Fairy Shendai gave those young men a glance, and could not help but laugh contemptuously. The strongest among the youths were only comparable to a nascent soul cultivator. In their eyes, they weren't even comparable to ants. They were existences that they didn't care about at all. Therefore, They were not as enlightened as Wu Qi, and failed to notice the strangeness of the situation. Wu Qi led the way with quick steps, his head drooping as he pondered over the mystery of the situation. Nevertheless, it did not matter what the Six Rivers City was up to, as he was followed by Fairy Xian Dai, a gold immortal who still had the strength to launch a single attack. On top of that, Wu Qi was very confident in his ability to escape. Therefore, he was not worried that he would run into any danger in the city. Without saying a word, Wu Qi brought them into the Six Rivers City. The city was not very large. The city wall measured about 5 miles in both width and length, and stood no taller than 25 feet. Most of the buildings in the city were constructed of earth and wood. Only the City Lord Mansion, which stood right in the center of the city, was constructed entirely with huge rocks. It was a tall, square, and ancient building made of black rocks that Wu Qi was familiar with. A row of 6 huge stone pillars was erected in front of the City Lord Mansion, each of which had a huge brazier placed on top of them. The green light from the flames illuminated half of the Six Rivers City. Upon entering the city, Wu Qi immediately sensed that something was not right. Almost at the same time, people in the taverns, restaurants, and various shops along the streets turned to look at Wu Qi and his companions. Their gazes were vague and indistinct, as they glanced briefly at Wu Qi and his companions. There was no killing intent or malicious intent in their gazes, as if they were just some ordinary people who were looking at them casually on the street. As Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai were 2 mighty gold immortals, they did not feel anything from such gazes. As the people who were looking at them were too weak, they could not arouse the nervousness in their hearts. But for Wu Qi, these gazes were all too familiar to him. Back on Earth, the spies sent by the Underhand sect to keep a lookout had done the same thing. Wu Qi followed those gazes and glanced over. They were all ordinary men with faces that would be easily overlooked if they were thrown into a crowd. They looked honest and simple, and looked no different from the people around them. Wu Qi was laughing in his mind. What exactly was happening in the Six Rivers City? Young men who did not conform to the military system of DU were undergoing military training outside the city, and there were eyes and ears everywhere in the city. Why did the Six Rivers City look like this? Leading Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai, Wu Qi continued along the main street in the city. While he was thinking of finding a good inn or a private house for lodging as well as finding a way to get himself some gold, silver, and jewelry, he saw a group of people approaching on the main street. The group consisted of about 30 men, and their leader was a middle-aged man, who looked haggard and looked like he had just recovered from a serious illness. This man was born with a dignified appearance. He originally had a very formidable square face, but at this moment, there was extreme exhaustion on his face. His entire spirit had collapsed. Following closely behind the middle-aged man were over 30 tall and burly armored soldiers. Just when Wu Qi found a few of them familiar, they roared furiously at the same time, drew their swords, and leaped off their mounts, striding toward Wu Qi furiously. One of them even roared furiously, "Wu Qi, since you're here, you can forget about going back now." Upon being shouted at by these men, Wu Qi suddenly realized who they were. When he was fighting with the Qin army in the depths of Meng Mountains, these few burly men were the deputy generals who accompanied the general of Daqin, Wang Baiqi. They were the generals of Daqin. As Wu Qi had formed his innate chaotic spirit body, he had neglected to change his facial features. As a result, he was recognized by them. Wu Qi's eyes flickered with a bright gleam. While he was thinking about how he should deal with this matter, a few figures suddenly came out from a restaurant on the side of the road. A handsome old man clad in a long robe and a tall hat chuckled and said, "Stand back. Old acquaintances are here. Excellent, excellent." Wu Qi gave the man a good look, and realized that he was indeed an old acquaintance. He was none other than his fellow disciple, Zhang Yi, the Prime Minister of Daqin. Another man snorted coldly, reached out his hand and waved at the few soldiers. Immediately, the few soldiers stepped back and stood aside respectfully. Wu Qi gave the burly man a look, who was clad in a long black robe and a bronze crown on his head. He was none other than the general of Daqin, Wang Baiqi. When they were in Meng Mountains, This group of valiant ministers and generals of Duchin wished they could hack Wu Qi into 1,000 pieces. Baiqi strode before Wu Qi, stared at Wu Qi coldly, sneered and said, "What a sharp nose. How could you track us all the way here? Ha, don't tell me you've been following us closely?" Wu Qi knew what Baiqi meant. He was asking if Great Yan's intelligence agency had been tracking Duchin's every move. He blinked at Baiqi and Zhang Yi, cupped his fist respectfully, and said, "I'm Reverend Black Dragon. Seniors, please forgive me for the misunderstanding in the past. I think we should let it go, right? Did you seize this Six Rivers city and use it as your base?" Zhang Yi and Bai Yi were taken aback, then turned to look at Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai at the same time, standing behind Wu Qi. Zhang Yi smiled, then took a step forward, cupped his fist and bowed to both men, and said, "Fellow Taoists, may I know where this immortal land is?" Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai exchanged a glance. Then, Fairy Xiandai walked out with a smile on her face, bowed gently to Zhang Yi and Baiqi, and said, "My name is Xiandai, and my husband is in trouble here. Please excuse us, fellow Taoists." Before her voice could fade away, the middle-aged man with a square face on the horseback roared, "You bunch of demon Taoists from the outer domain. How dare you invade the foundation of Diyu? You'll be hacked into 1,000 pieces and die a horrible death." Fairy Xiandai's pretty face flickered. Chapter 527. With a gentle smile on her face, Fairy Xiandai pointed a finger at the middle-aged man. It was a fair and delicate finger, like a freshly peeled onion, and it did not seem to possess any lethality. But, in just a brief moment, the middle-aged man's mount suddenly shattered to pieces. All his flesh, blood, tendons, bones, and internal organs were crushed into the tiniest powder. The wriggling powder swirled up into the air, transforming into tens of thousands of tiny butterflies the size of a thumb, flying in all directions gracefully. These fleshy butterflies covered half of the Six Rivers city. They lightly landed on the bodies of the residents of the city and gently bit them. All the people who were bitten by the butterflies withered and fell to the ground in an instant. All their blood essence was sucked dry by the butterflies, leaving behind only a thin layer of human skin, which fell to the ground together with their clothes. Fairy Xiandai clapped her hands lightly, causing tens of thousands of butterflies of flesh and blood to fly back gracefully, landing on her palm one after another. Each butterfly spat out a crystal-clear blood-red bead, each of which contained all the blood essence of a mortal. After collecting all the blood pearls, Fairy Xiandai clasped her palms together, and a fist-sized pearl condensed from the essence of flesh and blood appeared in her fair palm. "My husband, your injury has not fully healed, and you need some blood essence to heal it." Fairy Xiandai handed the blood pearl to Reverend Li Yang with a tender expression. He laughed ferociously, then gave the people around him a glance, who were staring at him with their mouths agape and eyes wide open. Then he took the blood pearl and swallowed it. A large bump appeared on Reverend Li Yang's throat, and before long, the bump slid down into his stomach. His stomach rumbled, and in just a few breaths of time, a hint of color returned to his pale face. Wu Qi shook his head. He turned to Zhang Yi and Baiqi, who had an unsightly expression on their faces, and said, "I met both seniors in a barren mountain outside the city. They are severely wounded, and they need a place to recuperate, as well as some energy stones and immortal stones. I was unlucky to encounter a strong enemy and was stripped clean." Laughing strangely, Wu Qi turned to Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said, "Fellow Taoists, you seem to have occupied the Six Rivers city, haven't you? As for the matter of spirit stones and immortal stones, I'll have to trouble you too, fellow Taoists." The square-faced middle-aged man fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Fairy Xiandai, who was wearing a faint smile on her face. Suddenly, he howled at the top of his voice, "You are a bunch of fiends! How dare you wreak havoc on the people of Diyu? All of you, quickly bind yourselves and come with me to apologize to Lord Prefecture Overseer. Only then will you be able to retain a shred of your remnant souls for reincarnation. If you continue to commit evil, once my Diyu army arrives, all of you will die without a burial place." Fairy Xiandai gave Zhang Yi a gentle smile and said, "Fellow Taoist, I can't bear to kill all of you here." Zhang Yi shuddered. He recalled the attack Fairy Xiandai had displayed just now, and he knew very well that even if he and Baiqi joined forces, they would still be no match for Fairy Xiandai. He smiled wryly and gave Baiqi a meaningful look. Clenching his jaw, Baiqi walked over to the square-faced man and stamped his feet hard twice. "Shut up, Yuan Fong. If you don't want your wife and children to be killed by 1,000 cuts, you better listen to me." Baiqi's temper flared up and he sent another kick down at Yuan Fong's square face. Next, his foot pressed down on Yuan Fong's head a few times before viciously stepping on it. If you hadn't offended the senior, how could the Six Rivers city be plunged into such a calamity? Baiqi roared furiously. Fairy Xiandai had a very gentle smile on her face, like a young girl next door, as gentle and bright as a winter jasmine. But everyone could see that behind her gentle smile, there were the venomous fangs of a cobra, deadly enough to kill someone in an instant. The city lord, Yuan Fong, who had killed half of the people in the Six Rivers city with just one sentence, fell to the ground as if he had lost his parents. He stared blankly at Fairy Xiandai, who was smiling at him. Wu Qi looked at the unlucky fellow with a little pity. He was already unlucky enough to be controlled by Zhang Yi and Baiqi in the dark, and in the end, he even brought 2 murderous stars to his doorstep. It was not something that an ordinary person could have. But when he looked at Zhang Yi and Baiqi, whose faces were also unsightly, Wu Qi's mood suddenly became better. Yuan Fong is unlucky, but Zhang Yi and Baiqi are not any better. By the looks of it, the Six Rivers city is the stronghold that Da Qin built on Pangu continent. They must be very angry that I've brought 2 murderous stars to my doorstep. Wu Qi chuckled, then took 2 steps forward and said to Zhang Yi, "Old Mr. Zhang, as both seniors are severely wounded, we'd better clean up a courtyard for them to rest in. Bring me as many energy stones and immortal stones as you can find." Why are you staring at me like that? The world is vast, but seniors are the most seriously wounded. Why don't you go and prepare them? Zhang Yi and Baiqi were so angry that they almost coughed blood when they saw Wu Qi shamelessly use the tiger skin as a banner. Zhang Yi gave Wu Qi a fierce look, then said in a deep voice, "Quickly clean up the City Lord Mansion and welcome seniors to stay in it. Give all the energy stones and other things in the storehouse to seniors, and give all the spirit herbs in the storehouse to seniors if they need them." Reverend Liang raised his head proudly, while Fairy Xiandai bowed to Zhang Yi smilingly and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoists." Alas, so long as fellow Taoists don't leave the area within 5,000 kilometers of this city, then you will absolutely not have to worry about your lives. Fairy Xiandai smiled faintly and reminded, "Also, do not use any voice-transmitting formations or spirit talismans, as they are useless in front of me. All the official documents must be checked by me before they are sent out. If anyone dares to do anything unusual, don't blame me for being merciless. In fact, Xiandai is the most soft-hearted person in the world, and I don't even have the heart to kill." Zhang Yi and Baiqi's faces darkened, as they pretended that they did not hear the second half of Fairy Xiandai's words. How could someone who had killed several tens of thousands of people be considered soft-hearted? Baiqi was a man who had killed countless people, but even when he was killing, he would never be able to wear a smile on his face like Fairy Xiandai did. After some busy work, the not-so-large City Lord Mansion of the Six Rivers City was finally cleaned up, and Reverend Liang and Fairy Xiandai were given an abode located in the most secluded garden with the most beautiful scenery. In addition to that, several dozens of young serving maids were assigned to serve them. All sorts of energy stones, immortal stones, herbs, delicacies, and many other items that could be found in the Six Rivers City were sent to the abode. Fairy Xiandai did not waste her time. Tens of thousands of butterflies made of flesh and blood were wheeling gracefully around the Six Rivers City. Sure enough, she had taken control of the land within 10,000 miles, especially the sky above the city, where there were more than 10,000 butterflies hovering. The sunlight penetrated through the thin wings of these butterflies made of flesh and blood, and they actually glowed with rainbow light. This kind of magnificent and strange beauty was like a mountain pressing down on everyone's heart, so heavy that they couldn't breathe. In the great hall of the city lord mansion of the Six River City, the puppet city lord, Yuan Fong, stood in a corner with a blank expression, lost in his own thoughts. But no one present would care about what he was thinking. In the cruel world of immortal cultivators, a weak existence like him was just a target to be bullied by others. No one would have any sympathy for him. The large chair at the center of the hall was empty. Wu Qi sat on a row of chairs on the left, while Zhang Yi and Bai Qi sat side by side opposite him. With a smile on his face, Wu Qi looked at Zhang Yi and Bai Qi, who were standing opposite him. Both of them had an expression as if they wanted to devour Wu Qi alive. They were glaring fiercely at Wu Qi, as if they really wanted to swallow him alive, then drag him into the latrine and let him be a companion of filthy things. "All right, don't stare at me so fiercely." Wu Qi sighed helplessly. He grabbed Ao Buzan from his shoulder, coiled him around his finger, and slowly played with him like a child playing with an earthworm. Bai Qi was so angry that his teeth were chattering. "Why did you come here?" he said through gritted teeth. Wu Qi spread his arms, looked at Bai Qi innocently, and said with a wry smile, "What an unexpected disaster. I was just passing by, and had no idea that you were running a business here. In the end, I was robbed by those two fellows, and they forced me to work for them. I brought them here, but little did I know that this place is already under your control." Zhang Yi was trembling with anger. He pointed his finger at Wu Qi and scolded, "Pangu Continent is a huge place, and you can go anywhere you like. Why did you have to come to the Six Rivers City? Do you know how much effort we have spent to control this place? Not only do we have to control this place secretly, but we also have to keep the common people and the officials of Mu Province in the dark about what is going on here, and at the same time, we have to develop our overall strength in the dark. Do you think it is easy?" Wu Qi felt that he was wronged as well. With a wry smile on his face, he looked at Zhang Yi and said with a sigh, "I didn't want to do that. Pangu Continent is a huge place, and I just randomly picked a direction. How could I know that I would bump into them?" The three of them stared at each other for a while. Finally, Wu Qi said with a wry smile, "Serve them well. Those two fellows are being hunted by powerful enemies, and they are already frightened by the twang of a bowstring. If you show any unusual behavior, I'm afraid you will be killed. Perhaps those two seniors are listening to our conversation right now. I reckon that they have at least the cultivation base of gold immortals. With our overall strength, we'd better serve them obediently." Zhang Yi and Bai Qi exchanged a glance. After a long while, they finally heaved a sigh and slumped weakly on their seats. Inside the abode in the back garden, Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai nodded satisfyingly at the same time. Reverend Li Yang smiled and said, "This Reverend Black Dragon is a sensible man. Why don't we let him take care of the Six Rivers City for us during this period of time? We need a safe place to rest." Fairy Xian Dai nodded and smiled. Then, streams of bright red blood oozed out of her 7 apertures at the same time. She coughed violently and said, "We have to rest well. As long as I can restore 30% of my energy, I'll be able to bring you out of here. But now, I don't even have the strength to launch a single strike. We have to deter them, or else both you and I will be killed." Reverend Li Yang's facial muscles twitched. He gave Fairy Xian Dai a glance, who lay motionless on the bed, and suddenly breathed out a deep sigh. Wu Qi, Zhang Yi, and Bai Qi, who were sitting cross-legged in the great hall, heard Reverend Li Yang's voice ringing out in the air at the same time. From today onwards, Reverend Black Dragon will be the representative of the Six Rivers City. Anyone who disobeys will be killed. Here are 3 gold immortal talismans for Reverend Black Dragon's protection. 3 glinting golden immortal talismans appeared out of thin air, drifting over to Wu Qi's heart. Wu Qi received the talismans respectfully, rose to his feet, cupped his fist and bowed deeply in the direction of the back garden. Instantly, Bai Qi and Zhang Yi's faces turned as unsightly as a dead man. Chapter 528. With a slight movement of his body, Wu Qi absorbed the layer of dust into his body, and was instantly devoured and transformed by the chaotic energy. At the level of the 7 foundation elevating technique, as long as Wu Qi's body could withstand it, his fleshly body could absorb and transform anything. Unless it was a frightening attack that could instantly kill him, or a poisonous thing that could instantly poison him to death, as long as it didn't kill him on the spot, he could absorb and transform all the other attacks with his fleshly body. Wu Qi didn't pay any attention to Ao Buzan, who was secretly curling up his anger. All he could do was focus on cultivating and improving his own cultivation base as quickly as possible. Ao Buzan coiled around Wu Qi's shoulder, looked at Wu Qi's face with his eyes tightly closed, laughed complacently and said, "Lao Tzu has found herself a monster to be her master. Tiske, it feels great to have a strong backing. In the future, with Lao Tzu as my master, and my master as my master, my days are going to be great." Wu Qi reached out a finger and lightly flicked Ao Buzan away. Amidst a shrill whistling sound, Ao Buzan plunged headfirst into the wall of the chamber, with half of his body sticking into it. He wriggled and wriggled on the wall for a long time like a maggot, and only then did he finally manage to pull his body out. He had stopped cultivating the cultivation technique in his body, but the cultivation of his fleshly body was still progressing. In his spiritual ocean, Wu Qi's innate chaotic divine soul kept waving his hand and drawing out countless mysterious runes of various sizes. Each rune contained a very strong power, and they were imprinted into every corner of Wu Qi's body. Wu Qi sat cross-legged in the cultivation chamber specially prepared for him, and at the same time, he was practicing the 7 foundation elevating technique, the Song of Gale, the Dark in Water scripture, the Inferno Hell Fiend scripture, the Inaction Dao scripture, and many other secret cultivation techniques. At the same time, a dense purple mist was gathering on the surface of his body, constantly injecting into his body. Beneath his skin, large patches of dragon scales were faintly discernible, and a rich true dragon aura was constantly emanating from his body. A series of cracking noise could be heard from inside his body. Ao Buzan's body was growing bit by bit at a visible rate. Gnashing his teeth, he raised his pair of claws and clawed towards the sky. With a twisted face, he growled in a low voice, "Just you wait. Lao Tzu will never make the same mistake as he did back then. TSK, I must learn Master's innate escape technique. Let's see how the Western White Emperor's henchmen will discover that Lao Tzu was peeping at their little princess bathing." Currently, Wu Qi's spirit body was not very strong, so the negative energy he could withstand was not very strong. He mainly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. Ordinary cultivators could only absorb spiritual energy of a certain attribute and turn it into their own cultivation base. Wu Qi's situation of absorbing spiritual energy regardless of its attribute had imperceptibly made his cultivation speed much faster than other cultivators. After grabbing Ao Buzan and placing him on his shoulder, Wu Qi opened the stone door and walked out slowly. Wu Qi smiled inwardly. He knew that as long as he kept studying the true profound meaning of chaos, he would be able to keep improving his cultivation base. A golden path was right in front of him. As mentioned in Scroll of Stealing, as long as one could reach the level of 7 foundation elevating technique, the speed of cultivation would be at a tremendous pace, and it would no longer be as arduous and difficult as when cultivating the 7 foundation elevating technique. Wu Qi pondered for a brief moment, then suddenly cried out, "Somebody, bring me to greet the 2 seniors. I want to know what they need." After attaining the chaotic spirit body, Wu Qi's intellect had reached an inhuman level. Coupled with the detailed descriptions of various daos of heaven and earth found in many cultivation manuals, he had easily broken through the first 9 layers of Heaven Immortal Realm, and his overall strength had stabilized at the level of 27th tier Heaven Immortal. It seems Lao Tzu will be able to sweep across the world with his spear very soon. While exercising the dragon transformation script, Ao Buzan looked up at the ceiling and murmured to himself, "How many years has it been since those old lovers of Lao Tzu? How many times have they cuckolded Lao Tzu? TSK, come to think of it, how many females had Lao Tzu hooked up with in those years? TSK, they should be married and have children by now, shouldn't they? I wonder which bastard has picked up Lao Tzu's leftovers. After forming the innate chaotic spirit body, the 7 foundation elevating technique had evolved into the 7 foundation elevating technique. Everything had gone through a very magical transformation. Natural energies, no matter what kind of natural energies they were, including all kinds of yin energies, evil energies, ghost energies, and fiend energies, could be absorbed by Wu Qi's body and gradually transformed into chaotic energies. Everything came from chaos, and naturally, everything could return to chaos. The innate chaotic spirit body could contain everything. Even the tiny wisp of energy when he broke through the realm of heaven immortal was devoured by Wu Qi's innate chaotic spirit body. As a result, he did not face any heavenly tribulation even when he broke through the realm of 27th tier heaven immortal. From this day onwards, Wu Qi was like a ghost in the heavenly Tao. Unless he did something that the heavenly Tao could not tolerate, it would be very difficult for the heavenly Tao to detect his existence. Audiobook angrily waved his claws at Wu Qi, then sat down cross-legged on the ground and began cultivating the dragon transformation script, which was a secret technique of dragons. He knew all the cultivation techniques of the dragon transformation script very well, and he had a very rich experience in cultivating it. On top of that, he had borrowed the energy from Wu Qi to form the body of a chaotic black dragon. Therefore, the speed at which he cultivated the dragon transformation script was 1,000 times faster than when he first started cultivating it. Heavy snow was falling from the sky, and the 6 Rivers city was covered with a sheet of pure white. A long and thick stream of white mist sprayed out from his nostrils. Suddenly, Wu Qi's stiff body moved. He opened his eyes abruptly. A mass of chaotic starlight spun slightly in his eyes, unleashing an enormous suction force that devoured all the energies in the room and sent them into his mystic eyes of universe. More precisely, they were sent into his chaotic divine eyes. 2 burly men came into the room. They gave Wu Qi a glance, then brought him to the back garden. Green gusts of wind, white cold air, black fiend energy, and clouds of various colors were swirling and wheeling inside Wu Qi's body. These clouds were produced from chaotic energy, and in the end, they returned to chaotic energy. The process of cultivation would not bring any improvement to Wu Qi's cultivation base, but it allowed Wu Qi to keep studying the profound principles of heaven and earth contained in these few cultivation techniques, fusing them into the chaotic void inside Wu Qi's body. Daughter of so-and-so celestial lord, granddaughter of so-and-so immortal king, great-granddaughter of so-and-so emperor, fiancé of so-and-so crown prince. He did not need to separate the natural energies, nor did he need to purify and refine them. As long as the natural energies entered his body, they would immediately transform into chaotic energies and store in every corner of his body. There was no distinction between Jin Dan and nascent soul in his body. It was like an undeveloped chaotic space, where chaotic energies were stored everywhere. There was no distinction between vital and non-vital parts of his body, and he no longer had any weakness in the conventional sense. Audiobook began to list the names of his lovers in the past. If some of them were to be heard by others, it would definitely scare a group of people to death. 6 Rivers City, City Lord Mansion. With a slight sway of his body, the chaotic energies in his body began to spin rapidly like a nebula, filled with a strange aura that could devour and destroy everything, yet at the same time, release and create everything. The mystery of chaos was just like the yin-yang principle of Taiji. All the mysteries could be used with a single thought. It was a profound mystery that could not be described with words. Then, there were the mystic eyes of universe, the Tao of primordial runes, the acquired magnetic grand magic, and many other powerful mystic techniques that he had stolen or robbed. At the same time, Wu Qi was circulating all the mystic techniques in his body. Because his chaotic spirit body was all-encompassing, all sorts of mystic techniques were circulating in his body at the same time. There was no obstruction between them, and everything was as smooth as flowing water. Every time Wu Qi circulated all sorts of mystic techniques, he would gain a deeper understanding of them. What a domineering scroll of stealing! The 7 Foundation Elevating Art. Only at this moment will I know the true joy of cultivation. 36th tier, 35th tier, 34th tier, 33rd tier. A strange laugh was heard coming from beneath his feet. Wu Qi lowered his head and saw that Aobuzen had turned into an eel from a loach. Although he was an underdeveloped eel, his size had indeed increased by a lot. On top of that, although his size was extremely small, his cultivation base had broken through the realm of heaven immortal. He was a very hard-working fellow, and his innate talent and comprehensive ability could not be underestimated. In just 3 short months, he had regained his cultivation base of heaven immortal. The dragon transformation script had also improved to the same limit. At this point, Wu Qi finally encountered the first minor bottleneck. Because of the skyrocketing chaotic energy, his fleshly body felt a little bloated and painful. Naturally, he stopped circulating all the mystic techniques in his body, and just continued to maintain the tempering of his fleshly body. The scroll of stealing was not only about stealing all sorts of cultivation techniques and secret treasures, it was also about stealing a slim chance of survival from the heavenly Tao. This was the greatest secret of the scroll of stealing. Attracted by these runes, the mysterious purple mist in the surroundings kept being sucked into Wu Qi's body, and the strength of his fleshly body skyrocketed. When his magic power and divine abilities reached the realm of 27th tier heaven immortal, his fleshly body had finally reached the limit of this stage. The true body of heaven and earth scripture had improved his fleshly body to the level where he could fight against a 27th tier heaven immortal. All sorts of mystic techniques and divine abilities were circulating in his body, and his cultivation base was getting deeper and deeper. Meanwhile, the innate chaotic divine soul in Wu Qi's mind gradually condensed into a golden figure, emanating a vast light. All sorts of profound principles of the heaven and earth, as well as the understanding of the heavenly Tao, were flowing into the golden figure like a stream of water. Wu Qi's cultivation base kept growing, breaking through at an astonishing speed. The chaotic spirit body encompassed everything, and he could even cultivate both the true body of heaven and earth scripture and the dragon transformation script at the same time. By cultivating both cultivation techniques at the same time, Wu Qi's fleshly body had the flexibility and agility of a human warrior, as well as the ability to control all sorts of natural phenomena like wind, rain, thunder, and lightning with the body of a dragon's. The combination of both cultivation techniques had made Wu Qi's fleshly body much stronger than when he was cultivating either the true body of heaven and earth scripture or the dragon transformation script alone. As a result, all sorts of marks of the profound principles of the heaven and earth were gradually added to the chaotic energies in Wu Qi's body. With these marks, Wu Qi could better and faster use all sorts of divine abilities and techniques, and when he was fighting an enemy, he could use all sorts of ingenious maneuvers and make them faster and more dexterous. A layer of dust had piled up on the surface of his body. This time, he had been cultivating for at least 3 months. After retracting the chaotic airflow in his body, Wu Qi casually extracted a thread of chaotic airflow and transformed it into an inferno fiend nascent soul. After that, he released the threads of fiend energy from his body and transformed back into the peak stage nascent soul fiend cultivator, Reverend Black Dragon. Chapter 529. Heavy snow kept falling from the sky, and the city lord mansion had been dyed white by the heavy snow. According to Wu Qi's estimation, the temperature around the Six Rivers city had dropped to -30 to 40 degrees Celsius. However, countless armored soldiers were still stationed at all the important places of the city lord mansion. It was as if they could not feel the cold at all. They stood at their posts like iron pillars, and did not even blink their eyes at the cold wind that came blowing at their faces. These were the Daqin iron armors personally trained by Baichi. They were made up of the indigenous people of Pangu continent in just 1 year in the Six Rivers city. As Wu Qi followed 2 burly men and walked past these armored soldiers, he could feel the corner of his eyes twitching uncontrollably. In his eyes, these armored soldiers were as weak as ants, and he could crush them with just a finger. But the cold, killing intent emanating from them made Wu Qi shudder. Damn Qin. When it comes to the ability to fight a war, they are definitely the strongest among the 6 dynasties. Wu Qi twitched his lips and nodded inwardly, thinking that it was fortunate that they were on Pangu continent, where no matter how many low-grade soldiers there were, they could not decide the outcome of a war. Stepping through the snow, he walked into the back garden. A team of 12 serving maids was carrying some spirit fruits that only grew in the cold weather with white jade trays to Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai's residence. Wu Qi stood before the entrance of the simply decorated but dignified abode and cried out in a deep voice, "Junior Black Dragon requests an audience with seniors." Very soon, Fairy Xiandai's voice was heard. "Black Dragon is here? Come in, I have something to tell you." Wu Qi answered respectfully and strode into the abode. He walked around a screen, passed through a corridor, and entered the inner chamber of the abode. The architectural style and decoration of the Yu dynasty were mainly ancient and conservative. Although it was called an abode, and although it was the inner chamber of the master, the furnishings were very simple. The only thing that looked luxurious was the 4 huge bronze incense burners placed at the 4 corners of the spacious inner chamber. Charcoal was burning in the burners, making the chamber as warm as spring and filling the air with a faint fragrance. Reverend Li Yang, clad in a green Taoist robe, was leaning against a soft couch. 4 naked girls were kneeling beside him, carefully trimming his fingernails. Fairy Xiandai, clad in a luxurious feather coat made of sparrow feathers, was sitting cross-legged on a bed made of a cloud. She was holding a small wine cup in one hand and sipping some fine wine, while her other hand was pinching a snow-white spirit fruit that emanated a faint cold air. Wu Qi walked into the inner chamber. He gave the 4 teenage girls standing next to Reverend Li Yang a look, then bowed to both of them and said, "Junior Black Dragon offers greetings to seniors." The glance just now had given Wu Qi a faint killing intent. Clearly, the 4 girls had been used as cultivation vessels by Reverend Li Yang. Although they looked beautiful and young, their energy essence had been drained, and they only had 2 months left to live. Reverend Li Yang snorted coldly and said coolly, "I haven't seen you for 3 months, and yet you are not even as good as Zhang Yi and Baiqi. How dare you?" Fairy Xiandai giggled and said softly, "Well, Black Dragon is in a secluded cultivation to heal his injuries. Only when he is fully recovered will he be able to serve us better. Black Dragon, let me tell you something." "Just tell me, Fairy," Wu Qi said respectfully without hesitation. Fairy Xiandai was very satisfied with the attitude of a senior like Wu Qi. She gave Wu Qi a glance with her divine will, then nodded and said, "Your energy essence is full, and your cultivation base is at peak stage nascent soul realm. Not bad. If you can serve us well this time, you will definitely be rewarded when we return to our sect. Do you understand?" Wu Qi bowed and said with a smile, "I understand. Please tell me what you want, Fairy. As long as it is an order from you, I dare not disobey." Fairy Xiandai smiled and said, "While you were in a secluded cultivation to heal your injuries, I've asked Zhang Yi and Baiqi to gather some men and send them out of the city to survey the mineral veins, extracting energy stones and immortal stones. They seem to be lying to me, as they have only found a small amount of energy stones and immortal stones. When will they be able to gather the amount I need?" Wu Qi's heart gave a jerk. He had just escaped from Miaoying Palace, and had been working as the supervisor of the mine for 2 to 3 years in that damnable place. Was he going to be asked to do the same job again? Sure enough, he heard Fairy Xiandai say, "Now that your injuries are fully healed, you can urge them to speed up the extraction of energy stones and immortal stones. If they are really playing tricks in the mine, trying to slow down the speed of extraction, kill them with the 3 talismans, and you will be in charge of the entire 6 Rivers city." Wu Qi cupped his fist and said in a deep voice, "Of course, I'll do my best to serve both seniors. If Zhang Yi and Baiqi dare to be disrespectful, I'll definitely teach them a lesson." After waiting for a while, and realizing that Fairy Xiandai had nothing else to tell him, Wu Qi bowed and left the inner chamber. While frowning, Wu Qi walked towards the main hall of the city lord mansion. Countless thoughts were tumbling in his mind. Why were Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai in such a hurry to collect energy stones and immortal stones? All of them had the cultivation base of gold immortals. If they did not have the help of good immortal pills and only relied on immortal stones and energy stones, it would take them a long time to recover from such severe injuries. If they were in such a hurry to collect energy stones and immortal stones, and if Zhang Yi and Baiqi were playing tricks in the last 3 months, with Fairy Xiandai's character, she would have killed both of them herself long ago. They were merely heaven immortals who had just transcended their tribulation, and Fairy Xiandai could easily kill them. Why did she keep delaying until now? Why did she let me strike? There must be something fishy about this. With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi walked into the main hall and sat straight on the large chair that belonged to the city lord of the Six Rivers City. He cleared his throat and gave an order in a dignified manner. Please invite old Mr. Zhang Yi and General Baiqi here. I have something important to discuss with them. Through the front door of the main hall, Wu Qi saw butterflies made of flesh and blood flying in the air amidst the heavy snow. However, Wu Qi suddenly felt that these butterflies were lifeless, as if they were just floating in the air without any vitality. This is what Fairy Xiandai used to seal off the Six Rivers City and the surrounding 10,000 miles. After a brief moment of silence, Wu Qi's eyes flickered. The sound of footsteps was heard, as Zhang Yi and Baiqi walked into the main hall one after another. When they saw Wu Qi sitting upright on the big chair in the middle of the hall, they exchanged a glance, then gave Wu Qi a slightly angry glare. Helplessly, they sat on the big chairs on both sides of the hall, one on the left and one on the right. Clearing his throat, Wu Qi cupped his fist at Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said with a smile, "Both of you must be tired for the past 3 months." Baiqi snorted coldly, not bothering to reply. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi nodded at Wu Qi smilingly and said, "You flatter me. Fellow Taoist, have you recovered from your secluded cultivation? Over the past 3 months, both seniors have asked us to mine the mineral veins, excavate energy and immortal stones. But the Six Rivers City does not have a lot of manpower, and the speed of mining is not satisfactory to both seniors." Zhang Yi looked at Wu Qi, his eyes flickering, as if there was a special charm in them. Wu Qi looked at Zhang Yi, and he seemed to understand the meaning behind the flickering eyes. Zhang Yi and Baiqi were testing Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai with some method. After a brief moment of silence, Wu Qi gave Zhang Yi a deep look and said in a deep voice, "From today onwards, I'll be in charge of all the matters related to both seniors. You just need to mobilize the manpower and listen to my orders. I've paid a visit to both seniors today, and I've found that you have not done enough." Baiqi glared at him and was about to curse. But when he saw the flickering eyes in Wu Qi's eyes, Baiqi opened his mouth and sat back down angrily. He pointed a finger at Wu Qi and cried out, "Since you are so capable, why don't you just do your job well? Stop making sarcastic remarks here." Wu Qi tilted his head up and said with a cold grin, "Of course I'll do my job well. From today onwards, everyone in and out of the Six Rivers City, regardless of their age or gender, will listen to my orders. All the old and weak will go out of the city to collect all kinds of spirit fruits for both seniors to enjoy. All the young and strong, including the soldiers in the city, will start mining the mineral veins, collecting enough energy and immortal stones for both seniors as soon as possible." Intentionally or unintentionally, Wu Qi emphasized the word enough, hoping that Zhang Yi and Baiqi could understand him. At the same time, Wu Qi blinked his eyes rapidly, a look of worry in his eyes. He wanted to tell Zhang Yi and Baiqi that both of them were immortals who killed without batting an eyelid. If they were impatient, they would definitely kill them to establish their authority. Wu Qi would not feel a heartache if Zhang Yi and Baiqi were killed, but it would not be good if he, Wu Qi, was caught in the crossfire. Zhang Yi and Baiqi stared at Wu Qi. At last, they rose to their feet together, bowed to Wu Qi and said, "If so, it all depends on what fellow Taoist is going to do." Wu Qi nodded deeply. He breathed out a sigh of relief inwardly, as it seemed like both of them had understood his words. Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi cupped his fist and said to the ceiling, "Seniors, are you satisfied with what I've done?" Not long after that, Reverend Li Yang's voice was heard, "Very good. That's what you've done." We are now accumulating energy stones and immortal stones to heal our wounds. If the energy stones and immortal stones you've given us do not satisfy us, we will have no choice but to kill all of you, a bunch of useless fools." With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi cupped his fist and said respectfully to the ceiling, "I'll definitely do my best to satisfy both seniors." Under Wu Qi's lead, all the residents of the entire Six Rivers City and the over 100 villages in the surrounding area were mobilized. The people on Panga continent had a very strong physique. On a cold winter day, regardless of their age or gender, they could go out to work. Although it was extremely tiring, their lives were not in danger. Tens of thousands of old and weak people were sent out by Wu Qi to collect all kinds of spirit fruits and herbs, while under the unified command of Wu Qi and Zhang Yi, the rest of the young and strong people were sent to an energy stone vein that had already been explored, and began to mine energy stones with all their might. 200,000 people worked with all their might, and in just a few days, spirit fruits and herbs that piled up like a small hill were sent back to the Six Rivers City. A few days later, a large amount of energy stones and immortal stones were sent to Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai. Both of them were overjoyed, and their attitude toward Wu Qi became even better. Wu Qi also noticed that these energy stones and immortal stones were not used by them to heal their wounds or cultivate their cultivation. Instead, they were all given to Fairy Xiandai. That made Wu Qi feel even more confident. Chapter 530. Served carefully by Wu Qi and Zhang Yi, Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai lived a carefree life in the Six Rivers City. Amidst Wu Qi's respectful smile, plates of spirit fruits, plates of delicately prepared delicacies, and pots of fragrant wine were sent into the stomachs of Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai. Although they were gold immortals still had a craving for good food. They had no resistance to spirit fruits, the various delicacies made from them, and the fine wines brewed from them. Together with the wine and delicacies, there were also energy stones and immortal stones that piled up like a small hill. Over 100,000 strong youths of the Six Rivers City were employed to carry out a destructive mining operation on a few ore veins near the city. Among them were Wu Qi, a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator, Zhang Yi and Baiqi, two heaven immortals, and nearly 10,000 formidable warriors who practiced the cultivation techniques of the human race. In just 2 months, the energy stones and immortal stones had reached several 100,000. Fairy Xiandai's smile grew gentler and more beautiful. Finally, on this day, when winter was about to end and spring was about to arrive on Panga continent, Fairy Xiandai summoned Wu Qi and the others, and ordered Zhang Yi and Baiqi to gather all the people of the Six Rivers City around the city, waiting for her orders. Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai, who had been cooped up in their abode for a few months, had put on brand new gorgeous robes and were standing at the entrance to the main hall of the city lord mansion, looking down at Wu Qi, Zhang Yi, and Baiqi with a smile on their faces. Fairy Xiandai clapped her hands and bowed gracefully to Wu Qi and the others. "Thank you for your help, fellow Taoists," she said with a gentle smile. "Without your help, I have no idea when my husband and I would have been able to escape from this calamity." Reverend Li Yang smiled as well, then said gently, "Thinking back to a few months ago, we were indeed in a difficult situation. Fellow Taoist Xiandai and I." Fairy Xiandai gave Reverend Li Yang a fierce glare. Reverend Li Yang quickly corrected himself and said, "My wife and I were indeed in a difficult situation at that time. I was chased to the point where I had nowhere to go. I didn't even dare to rashly enter a city when I passed by a town of any size. I was afraid that the news would leak." Fairy Xiandai hugged Reverend Li Yang's left arm and said softly, "The heaven has taken pity on us. We have met fellow Taoist Black Dragon. I asked fellow Taoist Black Dragon to come to Six Rivers City to investigate this matter. If the warrant for our arrest has already arrived, then we'll naturally have to flee. Fortunately, this place has already been occupied by Zhang Yi and Baiqi." Wu Qi sighed softly. He put his hands in his sleeves and looked at Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi took a step forward and said coolly, "This minister will help you finish the rest." The two of you found out that the Six Rivers city has been occupied by the Dutchine army, and is now the territory of the cultivators. So, you stayed here to collect immortal stones and spirit stones. I believe you are not going to use those things to heal your wounds, but to escape from Pangu continent, am I right? Fairy Xiandai looked at Zhang Yi with surprise. She nodded her head like a cute girl next door and praised, "Fellow Taoist Zhang Yi is very clever. How do you know that we are collecting energy stones and immortal stones to escape from Pangu continent? Hee, how do you know that we can escape from here without using the interstellar teleportation formation?" Baichi snorted coldly and said in a low, muffled voice, "Don't you dare underestimate us. Your scheme is nothing in our eyes. I don't know what kind of divine ability or mystic technique you have, but do you think you are the only one who knows about a technique that can allow us to travel across the void without using a teleportation formation?" Wu Qi's ears pricked up immediately. Does anyone in Dutchine dynasty know about a technique that can allow us to travel across the void without using a teleportation formation? Doesn't this mean that it is more powerful than any escape technique? Even the scroll of stealing did not mention about this mystic technique. Could it be another technique invented by an immortal cultivator after the senior mentioned in the scroll of stealing? Fairy Xiandai turned to look at Baichi in surprise. Her smiling face gradually turned cold as she cried out coldly, "I can't believe you know about the energy transference and energy gathering true form void treading grand divine ability. It looks like your foundation is not as simple as it seems. If that is the case, don't blame me, Xiandai. Initially, I felt a little guilty for killing you and taking your blood essence to help me recover my energy. But now, since you want to kill me to silence me, don't blame me for being ruthless." Wu Qi, Zhang Yi, and Baichi were laughing coldly. Even the dozens of deputies behind Baichi, and the dozens of subordinates behind Zhang Yi, were laughing coldly at the same time. Fairy Xiandai had long planned to kill them to silence them, and at the same time, seize their blood essence to recover her energy. So, what she said now was no different from burying one's head in the sand. Fairy Xiandai's behavior was full of hypocrisy. How could Wu Qi and the others not laugh at her pretentious behavior? Fairy Xiandai's face turned pale with anger when she heard the mocking laughter. Narrowing her eyes, she cried out softly, "Don't laugh, all right? You are all going to die soon, but death can be divided into a quick and painful death. Why don't you let Xiandai kill you quickly and painfully?" Wu Qi sighed faintly, shaking his head and saying, "Seniors." "No, fellow Taoists, do you still have the strength to kill me?" Xiandai giggled, twisting her slender waist as she said mockingly, "Strength to kill? Do you really need to?" She took a deep breath, and her face fell instantly. Over the past few months, as she was severely injured, she had never used her immortal energy. Reverend Liang, on the other hand, had plucked several hundred girls and managed to recover some of his strength. Usually, he was the one who used his energy to guard against the others. Just now, when Xiandai was about to use her immortal energy, a cold breeze rushed out from her lower abdomen and spread to every corner of her body in a flash. The terrifying cold air was like a nine-headed serpent that quickly froze her body. The last trace of immortal power in her body was frozen and shattered. Even her immortal soul was like a candle in the wind, on the verge of collapse, as if it would be extinguished at any time. What the hell is this? Not only Fairy Xiandai, even Reverend Liang was screaming with fear. At the moment, Reverend Liang was in a worse condition than Fairy Xiandai. Large sheets of white frost had formed on the surface of his skin, and just when he roared, more than half of his body was sealed in a thin layer of ice. Wisps of cold breeze kept bursting out from the top of his head, while tiny ice crystals slowly drifted down from the top of his head. Zhang Yi and Baichi pointed a finger at Wu Qi at the same time and said with a wry smile, "This is Wu Qi's doing. We have no idea how he did it." Reverend Liang and Fairy Xiandai glared at Wu Qi at the same time and cried out at the same time, "Is your name not Reverend Black Dragon?" Wu Qi rolled his eyes, sneered, and snapped at both of them. "Didn't your parents tell you not to believe the words of strangers you meet on the street? How can you be so naive? I've brought a black dragon with me, and I call myself Reverend Black Dragon. Do you really believe me? If I brought your father with me and called myself Taoist father, wouldn't you address me as fellow Taoist father as well? Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai trembled with rage. They glared at Wu Qi with their eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets. Wu Qi sighed faintly, shaking his head and saying, "Do you know how you ended up in this situation today?" As he spoke, Wu Qi moved backward with a smile on his face, while Zhang Yi and Baiqi followed suit. Very soon, they were far away from the Six Rivers City. Led by many soldiers, the 200,000 people of the Six Rivers City outside the city had long retreated in all directions. Using all kinds of mounts and chariots, they soon retreated to a faraway place. Standing on a small hill about 100 miles away from the city gate, Wu Qi exercised his chaotic divine eyes and looked over at Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai. He laughed aloud and said, "Don't you think that ever since I personally took charge of your daily meals, you have rarely consumed spirit fruits directly? Instead, what we offer you is a mixture of spirit fruit soup." Fairy Xiandai's voice was heard coming from afar as well. "Although it is a mixture of spirit fruit soup and all kinds of dishes, as I am an expert in the Tao of alchemy, these soup and dishes are not poisonous." Wu Qi said with a strange voice, "Indeed, those soup and dishes are not poisonous. But when the soup and dishes served today are mixed with the soup and dishes served 7 days later, they will produce a trace of poison. When the soup and dishes served on the 2nd day are mixed with the soup and dishes served on the 9th day, they will produce a trace of poison as well. When the soup and dishes served on the 3rd day are mixed with the soup and dishes served on the 18th day, they will produce a trace of poison as well. Unless you can refine all the medicinal properties of the spirit fruits as soon as possible every time, the medicinal properties will accumulate in your body, and sooner or later, they will turn into a lingering compound poison. But as you are severely wounded, you have never gone into secluded cultivation, and you have never exercised your cultivation base to refine these soup and dishes. As a result, the delicacies you eat every day have turned into a deadly poison that can corrode your bones and enter your intestines. Actually, it only took me 24 days to plant the Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder in your body. Are you familiar with the name? Wu Qi laughed complacently. Using the formula of the Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder found in Lady Dark Goldwater's memory, together with the technique of venomous insect he inherited from Princess Zhonglu, and the numerous spirit herbs of ice element that grew in the cold and snowy land around the Six Rivers City, he was finally able to concoct the Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder and plant it into their bodies. How could he not feel proud when he had managed to defeat 2 gold immortals with such an ingenious plan? Just like the Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder, the Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder was a vicious poison that could strike terror into the hearts of many gold immortals and heaven immortals. Fairy Xian Dai used to be a good friend of Lady Dark Goldwater, and Reverend Li Yang used to travel with her. How could they not know the name of this deadly poison? It was also one of the 2 trump cards of Dark Een Sky Water Palace that could strike fear into one's heart. Dark Een Soul Captivating Powder. Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai were struck dumb for a full 15 minutes, before they cried out as if they had just seen a ghost. Fairy Xian Dai cried out fiercely, "Dark Een Heaven Water Palace? You are from Dark Een Sky Water Palace? How did you happen to bump into us? Is Lady Divine Water here to deal with us? Is she the one who is plotting against us? But only the 2 of us know that we have killed Lady Dark Goldwater. Who else would know that we are the ones who killed her?" Fairy Xian Dai roared hoarsely, her mind on the verge of collapse. Wu Qi shook his head and said coolly, "Now, you can die." With a flip of his palm, Wu Qi produced the 3 gold immortal talismans given to him by Reverend Li Yang. Chapter 5:31. Clutching the 3 gold immortal talismans in his hand, Wu Qi threw them towards the Six Rivers City. As soon as the talismans were thrown out, they exploded into a ball of flame that measured about 10 feet in circumference, bursting like a pig's urine bubble. After that, there was no more movement. Wu Qi was struck dumb, and so were the people around him. In the city, Reverend Liang let out a shrill laugh and said, "Fools! It was not easy for me and Xian Dai to escape to this place. How could we possibly have 3 gold immortal talismans with us? All our talismans and magical treasures have been used up during the pursuit. These 3 talismans are just something I concocted at the last minute to fool you." Reverend Liang's words made Wu Qi's eyelids twitch with anger. Over the past few months, he had kept the 3 gold immortal talismans with great care, but it turned out that they were just 3 silver spear tips. Off to the side, Zhang Yi and Baiqi were chuckling complacently. They did not expect that the 3 gold immortal talismans were fake items with no power at all. For some reason, Zhang Yi and Baiqi suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and the way they looked at Wu Qi was a little unfriendly. With a cold snort, Wu Qi stared at the 6 Rivers city 100 miles away and said ferociously, "Let's see how much combative strength you have even without these talismans." A very thin sheet of black light burst out from under his feet, and Wu Qi's body abruptly rose into the sky. Accompanied by a muffled buzzing noise, the surrounding natural energy suddenly began to tremble violently. Large sheets of earthy yellow gas burst out from the ground and rushed into Wu Qi's body, then transformed into glistening black magnetic force and shot whistling out. At the side, Zhang Yi's expression changed and became extremely ugly. It was his most powerful divine ability, the acquired magnetic grand magic, and Wu Qi had forcibly snatched it away from him. When he saw Wu Qi fighting the enemy with the divine ability he was most familiar with, Zhang Yi felt as if a pool of blood was about to burst out of his chest. Accompanied by a buzzing sound, dozens of black sword beams, each about 10 feet long, condensed around Wu Qi. Wu Qi had his divine will locked onto Reverend Liang and Fairy Xian Dai. With a thought in his mind, several dozens of dark beams tore through the void, producing a buzzing noise that could only be heard when magnetic forces stirred the heaven and earth energy. In just a blink of an eye, they arrived before Reverend Liang and Fairy Xian Dai. Suddenly, a great sheet of black light burst out of them, and with Reverend Liang and Fairy Xian Dai as the center, the ground around them began to collapse rapidly. Followed by a thunderous rumbling noise, half of the 6 Rivers city collapsed for miles, turning the city into a deep pit. Zhang Yi and Baiqi's faces twitched violently. This was the foundation they controlled, the foundation of their Daqin. Fairy Xian Dai let out a shrill cry. The immortal energy in her body had been messed up by the dark Yin soul captivation powder, and she could not muster up any immortal energy in such a short time. She could only use her divine will to control the several tens of thousands of butterflies flying around the 6 Rivers city to fly toward her. In just a blink of an eye, the butterflies had arrived next to Fairy Xian Dai and Reverend Liang. Fluttering in the air, they formed a profound formation around them. The magnetic sword beams hacked and slashed at the formation, producing large ripples in the void. The air had formed an invisible barrier that kept the sword beams away. Protected by the formation, both of them hovered above the collapsed 6 Rivers city. Countless butterflies were fluttering around them, glinting beautifully under the sunlight. "Ignorant Junior, if you dare to touch even a single hair of mine, I'll definitely tear you into 1,000 pieces and kill your entire clan." Blood kept trickling down from the corner of Fairy Xian Dai's mouth. In fact, when she bumped into Wu Qi, she was just an empty shell, and nearly all her energy essence had been scattered. Now, she could not muster up the last bit of immortal energy, so she was completely relying on the last bit of soul essence left in her immortal soul to control these butterflies. Every time the magnetic force collided with the butterfly, it was equivalent to directly bombarding the essence of her immortal soul. With every collision, her immortal soul would become a little more scattered, and with every collision, her mind would become a little more dizzy. As long as Wu Qi continued to attack, he would certainly be able to torture a 7th-tier gold immortal to death. Reverend Liang was scared out of his wits. He threw his arms around Fairy Xian Dai and cried, "Xian Dai, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have asked you for help. Otherwise, you would still be living a carefree life in that minor feather heavenly realm. Why are you in this situation now?" Fairy Xian Dai clenched her jaws and snapped, "Cut the nonsense. Since I've come here to save you, We have to get out of here alive. Damn it, you really are poisoned by the Darkeen poison. Did you really not tell those bitches you hooked up with about Lady Dark Goldwater in those years? Even as she spoke, several dozens of sword beams slashed at the butterflies, shattering them into pieces. Suddenly, blood trickled down from Fairy Xiandai's nostrils. Reverend Li Yang was horrified. How could I tell such a serious matter? Lady Divine Water is only one step away from becoming a primordial immortal. How could I tell her something so serious? While swearing to Fairy Xiandai that he did not reveal the secret, Reverend Li Yang was trying his best to recall if he had accidentally told one of his confidants about the secret. Hovering in midair, Wu Qi controlled the acquired magnetic sword energies to launch a fierce attack at Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xiandai. Although Fairy Xiandai's butterfly formation had protected both of them, Wu Qi's chaotic divine eyes were very powerful. He could tell that Fairy Xiandai was at the end of her tether and was only defending with the last thread of her soul power. With a cold snort, Wu Qi extended his left hand and clenched his fist. Immediately, the surrounding air began to swirl, and a vast force of wind quickly gathered in his palm. Using the divine ability of extracting the force of the wind from the Song of Gale and condensing it into the energy of the astral wind, Wu Qi exercised the divine ability of controlling the astral wind to attack the enemy. In just a blink of an eye, a wind rope, several tens of feet tall and as thick as a thumb, was formed in his palm, twisting and turning like a flood dragon. Holding the tail of the wind rope with his left hand, Wu Qi swung it forcefully toward the Six Rivers City as if he was controlling a long whip. A series of ear-splitting whistling noises of the wind rang out, as the thin wind rope transformed into a black hurricane that measured about 1 mile in diameter. Countless wind pillars and whirlwinds surged rapidly within the over 100 miles long black hurricane, filling the air with deafening whistling noises. The wind pillars and whirlwinds rubbed against each other like countless lofty mountains crashing into each other, producing a deafening rumble that sounded no different from a thunderclap. The strong wind tore the air apart and rolled up a large windstorm. Countless crops that were about to ripen in the farmland near the Six Rivers City were uprooted by the strong wind, sucked into the windstorm, and sent flying in all directions. Meanwhile, several hundred waterspouts emerged on the surface of the Great Lake next to the Six Rivers City, pulling a large amount of lake water up into the sky and forming a huge water ball that measured about 100 miles in diameter. As the waterspouts were sucking the lake water in such a rapid manner, the surface of the lake dropped by several tens of feet, exposing a large patch of pitch-black mud underneath. A loud boom echoed out as the hurricane transformed from the wind ropes smashed onto the ground. The entire Six Rivers City, as well as all the farmland within 100 miles, was torn to shreds by the wind pillars and whirlwinds. Everything was shredded into the tiniest grains of sand. 36 gusts of wind hidden in the black hurricane slashed viciously at Fairy Xiandai's butterfly formation like 36 sharp blades. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 36 loud booms echoed out in a row. One after another, the gusts of wind shattered in front of the formation, and the butterfly formation exploded one after another. Fairy Xiandai's eyes bulged to the size of an inch. Her fair and delicate skin was torn apart inch by inch, and with her flesh and blood flying in all directions, she looked as miserable as a female ghost. She could no longer return to the image of a beautiful woman as gentle as water. Before Fairy Xiandai could recover from the shock, Wu Qi reached his right hand toward the 100 miles in diameter water ball in the sky and clenched his fist. Abruptly, the water ball collapsed inwardly until it was only about 1 mile in diameter, and the once white and bright water turned into a magnificent purple-blue color. The spell of turning water into ice found in the Dark Een water scripture was activated, and the water ball immediately turned into a purple-blue ice ball. The magnetic force dragged the ice ball and sent it plummeting down from the sky with the momentum of a thunderbolt. Although the ice ball was over 30 miles above the ground, accelerated by the magnetic force, it only took it 1/100th of a second to smash into Fairy Xiandai's butterfly formation. The ice ball was heavy, hard, cold, and traveling at an incredible speed. Zhang Yi and Baiqi saw a purple-blue light flash across the sky, and then, with the Six Rivers City as the center, the ground within 100 miles of the city suddenly sank. Amidst the deafening rumble, a plume of purple smoke towered up into the sky. But when it rose less than 1 mile into the sky, it was frozen into ice crystals by the extremely cold energy contained in the broken ice ball. Reverend Liang and Fairy Xian Dai cried out at the same time, "It is indeed the divine ability of turning water into ice found in the Dark Yin water scripture." Reverend Liang stared at the sky in despair. He really thought that Lady Divine Water had sent an expert to avenge her disciple. Suddenly, Fairy Xian Dai grabbed Reverend Liang's neck and gave him a few dozens of slaps with the back of her hand. She roared hoarsely, "Swear, swear with your natal primordial spirit that you love me, that you will love me for the rest of your life, that you will love me in countless reincarnations, that you will never hook up with those sluts again, and that you will never touch any other woman except for me. Swear it now. Or else I'll kill you right here." Reverend Liang was wild with joy. Did he still have a chance to escape? Without hesitation, he swore the oath as fast as he could. Fairy Xian Dai gave a shrill cry as all her immortal body below her neck shattered at the same time, turning into a large sheet of blood mist that enveloped Reverend Liang and her beautiful head. "Reverend Black Dragon, Wu Qi. I don't care what your name is, I'll never let you go." Suddenly, countless immortal stones and energy stones shot out from around Fairy Xian Dai's body, which she had acquired after countless years of laborious cultivation and exchanged for an enormous power. In just a blink of an eye, all the immortal energy and natural energy gushed out from them, fusing into the blood mist that Fairy Xian Dai had transformed into. Countless blood-colored runes condensed and formed into a huge, three-dimensional formation in the void. A jade-colored butterfly flashed and vanished into thin air. Wu Qi spread his divine will, covering an area of millions of miles in just a flash. But he could not find any trace of Fairy Xian Dai or Reverend Liang's aura. Wu Qi's face darkened. If he did not kill the snake, he would be harmed. The blood feud was set in stone this time. Just as Wu Qi was thinking about how to eliminate the root of the problem, Zhang Yi and Baiqi had surrounded him with dozens of subordinates. Chapter 5:32. Initially, the city was in good condition, with all the buildings neatly built by Qiqi. But now, the entire city was nowhere to be seen. All that was left was a huge pit, about 100 miles deep and 40 to 50 miles in diameter. The water from the lake next to it was pouring into the pit. Judging from this, it wouldn't take long before the Six Rivers City would be renamed to Six Rivers Lake. Ha! Tens of Baiqi's subordinates drew their weapons at the same time, emanating a towering murderous aura as they took a step closer to Wu Qi. Among these tens of Daqin generals, a small half had already transcended their heavenly tribulations and become heaven immortals. However, before Wu Qi, who possessed the fleshly body and magical power of a 27th-tier heaven immortal, they were just too weak. With a blink of his body, Wu Qi took a step forward and pressed his palm onto Baiqi's palm. He stared at Baiqi from a close distance, smiled coldly and said, "Prince of Wuan, great General Baiqi, it's better if you don't draw your sword. If you don't, we can still coexist peacefully. If you dare to draw your sword, I swear I'll slaughter all 200,000 people in your Six Rivers City and kill all the over 10,000 warriors under your command." Zhang Yi opened his mouth and was about to bargain with Wu Qi, but Wu Qi said impatiently, "I won't do any harm to your Daqin generals. In short, I'll give you 3 chances. Zhang Yi, Baiqi, if I need your help, just help me 3 times with all your might." He stared fixedly at Wu Qi, especially at Ao Buzan, who had fallen back onto Wu Qi's shoulder. "You're just a nascent soul cultivator?" Zhang Yi cried out in a deep voice. Originally, Wu Qi was going to reason with Zhang Yi and Baiqi, explaining his difficulties. But suddenly, he realized that this was the world of cultivators, and he, Zhang Yi, and Baiqi were all cultivators. Therefore, he would solve the problem with the rules of cultivators. Whoever's fist was bigger was the one who was right, the one who was the law. Explain? How could he explain anything to Zhang Yi and Baiqi, who were far inferior to him and could be killed with a finger? The crops, which were supposed to have a bountiful harvest, were destroyed by a few powerful spells of Wu Qi. Not even a single grain of rice was left, and everything was buried in the messy soil. A few villages closest to the Six Rivers city had completely vanished without a trace. All the livestock in the villages, such as pigs, dogs, cows, and horses, had been ripped to shreds by a few powerful magical spells, mixing with the soil. Zhang Yi and Baiqi looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. They gritted their teeth and agreed to Wu Qi's conditions. Cackling, he activated the Inferno Hell Devil scripture. Once again, a new Inferno Hell Devil infant emerged in Wu Qi's body. Dense fiend energy emanated from his body, and black smoke surrounded Wu Qi. A circle of fiend runes appeared behind his head, within which a few faintly visible fiend runes were flashing. Wu Qi chuckled and said, "Now, my cultivation base is at the peak of nascent soul realm. I am a fiend cultivator." Zhang Yi and Baiqi turned their heads with difficulty and looked at each other. Baiqi grabbed the hilt of his sword, feeling a little embarrassed and angry. Wu Qi laughed loudly. A white cloud shot out from under his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he was thousands of miles away. Zhang Yi and Baiqi thought to themselves that even if they were not much stronger than Meng Zhang, they had only transcended the heavenly tribulation and become heaven immortals a few years earlier than Meng Zhang. Zhang Yi pointed at the mess and said angrily, "Before we came here, the 200,000 people in the Six Rivers city had spent decades of hard work to build this little foundation. This Six Rivers city could have become a solid stronghold for me, Daqin, on Pangu continent, and when His Majesty comes here in the future, Daqin will be able to expand the territory and rule the world. But look at this. Look at what you have done to our painstaking efforts." The Inferno Hell Devil infant flew out of his body, transforming into a plume of dark smoke and wheeling around Wu Qi. Suddenly, Wu Qi grabbed the Inferno Hell Devil infant and tore it into two pieces with a strange cry. A great amount of dark fiend energy burst out of the Inferno Hell Devil infant. Wu Qi gave a miserable shriek and cried out, "I'm finished. My nascent soul is destroyed by myself. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." Behind Baiqi, an armored soldier, standing over 10 feet tall and burly like a wild boar, let out a furious cry as he pulled out a one-handed halberd and swung it down towards Wu Qi's head. The burly man thrust the halberd with his right hand, while pushing his left palm outward. A pitch-black palm thunder shot out and went straight towards Wu Qi's chest. The man's attack was clean and simple, without any sloppy tricks. Obviously, it was a skill he had tempered on the battlefield, and not the combat quality of those cultivators who only cultivated in cave abodes for show. Zhang Yi was shocked, while the corner of Baiqi's eyes twitched. This burly man, Meng Zhang, was Baiqi's trusted general. About 1 year ago, he had transcended his heavenly tribulation and become a heaven immortal. His moves were simple, but they had been personally taught by Baiqi. They were the most powerful and effective methods on the battlefield. The palm thunder was formed by gathering the resentment and the aura of death left behind by countless people before they were killed. It was called the army-breaching thunder of slaughter, and it possessed a very strong power. But how could Wu Qi neutralize it so easily? Humming a tune and flying tens of thousands of li, Wu Qi suddenly stopped on the cloud and swore angrily. "You dare to threaten this king?" Baiqi was so angry his eyes were about to crack. His right hand suddenly swung, wanting to draw his sword and decide victory with Wu Qi. Opening his mouth, under the stone-like gazes of Zhang Yi, Baiqi and the others, Wu Qi swallowed the two pieces of the Yuanying and large amounts of Mo energy into his mouth. He gave a satisfied burp. He spread his hands and smiled faintly. "Actually, I cultivate a Buddhist cultivation method. It is ever-changing, and only my appearance is revealed. Fellow Taoists, you have been blinded by appearance. What the naked eye sees is nothingness. Only by having a firm heart can one reach Bodhi." Wu Qi chuckled. The purgatory demon nascent soul in his body suddenly disintegrated. The chaotic energy returned to various parts of his body, and a strange aura spread out of his body. He looked at the stunned Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said with a smile, "Now, my cultivation is at the peak of the Khanate realm." Wu Qi looked at the stunned Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said with a smile, "Look, I self-destructed my Jin Dan, but I'm fine." Hearing Zhang Yi's words, Wu Qi let go of Baiqi, took a few steps back, cupped his fist and bowed to Zhang Yi with a smile on his face. Wu Qi snorted coldly. Suddenly, a crystal-clear ice shield appeared in front of him. When the pitch-black thunder palm touched the Xianbing shield, it was frozen into a ball of ice by the cold air before it could explode. When the one-handed halberd of the burly man was still 3 feet away from Wu Qi's head, Ao Buzan, who was lying on Wu Qi's shoulder, leaped up lazily, flicked his little tail, and sent the one-handed halberd flying far away. A large piece of skin on the burly man's palm was scratched, and blood dripped down from the wound. The chaotic energy condensed in his body, and a Jin Dan, which was based on the dark Yin water meridian, suddenly formed. Wisps of Jin Dan energy sprayed out from his body. Wu Qi smiled complacently and said, "Now, I have the cultivation base of Jin Dan." He opened his mouth, and the cold, purple-blue Jin Dan suddenly shot out from his mouth. Wu Qi weighed the chicken-sized Jin Dan in his palm, then suddenly threw the Jin Dan away like throwing a stone. Zhang Yi bowed back and said coolly, "Duke of Tianyun, the Six Rivers City is in urgent need of reconstruction. It is not suitable to entertain an honorable guest in the wilderness. Please help yourself." Wu Qi shook his head. He really did not mean it. Although he was the Duke of Great Yen, he really did not mean to make things difficult for Duqin. Originally, with the Six Rivers Lake as the center, over 100 miles of fertile farmland had collapsed to a depth of tens of miles. It was impossible for ordinary people to farm on such a land. It was simply an extra-large crater. Suddenly, Wu Qi let out a strange laugh. He clasped his hands behind his back and said coolly, "If you did not surround me just now, things could still be discussed. But, since you have attacked me, how can I leave so easily? In short, if you don't want to die, you Baiqi, will have to bow your head and obey my orders 3 times. If you agree, I'll leave immediately. If not, I'll strike right away and kill all the living beings in the Six River City." With a cold snort, Wu Qi dragged Baiqi and spun rapidly in all directions. Casually, he waved his fingers and shattered the weapons held in the hands of these captains. These weapons were all excellent magical treasures and energies, but before Wu Qi's strong fleshly body, they were as fragile as tofu. But with Wu Qi's current strength, how could Baiqi, who had just stepped into the realm of heaven immortal, be a match for him? Wu Qi's palm did not budge. No matter how hard Baiqi struggled, he could not move his palm at all. Wu Qi stared coldly at Baiqi and warned again, "If you dare to strike, I'll kill all the living beings in the Six Rivers City. Baiqi, don't be so shameless." Just as he finished his last sentence, Wu Qi suddenly burst into a loud laughter. He turned to Zhang Yi and Baiqi and said, I've made a mistake again. Why should I reason with you? Old fogey Zhang Yi, Baiqi, you boorish fellows, I've destroyed your Six Rivers City. What can you do to me? I've intentionally lured Reverend Li Yang and Fairy Xian Dai to the Six Rivers City. What can you do to me? Wu Qi grinned and gave the current Six Rivers City a glance. He would not have known if he did not look at it, but when he did, he felt a little embarrassed. Looking at Zhang Yi in surprise, Wu Qi smiled bitterly and said, "Old Mr. Zhang Yi, what are you doing? Over the past few months, we've been on the same boat through thick and thin. It took us a lot of effort to escape from the hands of those 2 gold immortals. Don't tell me it is the tradition of Duqin to burn the bridge after crossing the river?" Smiling bitterly, Wu Qi spread his arms and said helplessly, "I have no other choice. In order to deal with those 2 gold immortals, I have no choice but to use such a heavy attack. I don't have a single coin with me now, and I can't afford the compensation. What do you think?" With Wu Qi's current arm strength, with just a casual wave of his hand, the Jin Dan flew dozens of miles away. With a thought in Wu Qi's mind, the Jin Dan smashed into a small dirt mound and exploded. The violent force of the explosion destroyed everything within tens of miles, leaving behind a large pit several miles deep in the ground. With the promise of help from Zhang Yi and Baiqi, as well as Lao Ai and Duke of Longyang, who had boarded Wu Qi's pirate ship, and Su Qin, who was guarding in He City, Wu Qi was in a good mood. He felt that everything before his eyes was so pleasing to the eye, and he could not be happier. After witnessing everything, Zhang Yi suddenly cried out, "Enough! We are no match for Duke of Tianyun." Zhang Yi clenched his jaws tightly, causing a strand of his beard to twitch. He pointed in the direction of the Six Rivers City and bellowed, "What are you doing? Going through thick and thin together? Helping each other in the same boat? Ah, bullshit." Even Zhang Yi, who had always been gentle and elegant, could not help but curse. If not for you, would the Six Rivers City attract those two calamities? If not for you, would the Six Rivers City end up like this? Zhang Yi and Baiqi's faces turned extremely unsightly, especially Baiqi, whose body was trembling with anger. 3 chances to bow down and obey his orders? How could they, who were proud and arrogant, swallow their pride? He was lost. Where was this Six Rivers City located on Penghu continent? How could he return to the territory of Zhong province? Chapter 5:33. The surface area of Penghu continent was simply too vast. After leaving the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, for fear that Patriarch Miao Ying might be able to find out his whereabouts, Wu Qi chose a random direction and flew at random. He had changed directions a few times along the way, and as a result, he had no idea where he was now. When he was in the Six River City, Wu Qi found out that it was under the jurisdiction of Peng Province, a 9th-grade province that had just been established not long ago. As for the places around Peng Province, the common people in the city could not tell them. Just a county under Peng Province alone had a circumference of 1 million miles. Perhaps, those common people would not be able to walk out of a county for the rest of their lives. So, why would they care about the situation in those bigger provinces? Where exactly am I? Smiling bitterly, Wu Qi raised his head and looked at the sun. He could not even tell which direction he was in Zhong province. He closed his eyes and meditated, carefully communicating with the few celestial fiend puppets. The spiritual connection between them was still very clear, but Wu Qi only knew that he could communicate with them, but he could not sense where they were. This was also because his cultivation base was too weak. If he had the cultivation base of a gold immortal, his powerful divine will would be more than enough to determine the relationship between him and his puppets. Left with no other choice, Wu Qi touched his empty waist pouch and suddenly thought of going back to Six Rivers City to rob Zhang Yi and Baiqi. But when he thought about it, he realized that he had just forced them to agree to help him with all their might 3 times in the future. If he went back and robbed them now, it would be a little unreasonable. After pondering for some time, Wu Qi stamped his foot, gritted his teeth, and said, "Well, I'll just find a city and ask for some information first. There are always teleportation formations connecting the cities of Diyu province. When the time comes, I'll just need to gather some traveling expenses and return to Zhong province." He snorted coldly and retracted the chaotic energy in his body. Intentionally or unintentionally, he emanated a wisp of the aura of the true body of heaven and earth scripture. With that, Wu Qi pretended to be an ordinary human who had practiced some basic cultivation techniques of the human race, and began to run wildly in the wilderness. As he was cultivating the true body of heaven and earth scripture, when Wu Qi was running at top speed, his speed was comparable to an ordinary sword beam. And when he purposely exercised some magnetic force to push his body forward, his speed was at least 100 times faster than an ordinary sword beam. Amidst the boundless wilderness, a long dragon formed from sand and dust kept stretching forward. Wu Qi was waving his arms and running crazily across the wilderness, as if he had lost his mind. After running for a whole month, he finally left the territory of Feng province and entered the territory of Mi province, an 8th-grade province next to it. The population of this province was slightly denser than that of Feng province. As soon as he entered the territory, he came across a few small cities inhabited by the human race. Wu Qi scanned these cities with his divine will. Apart from dozens of powerful human warriors, the rest were all ordinary mortals who farmed and made their living. There was nothing valuable in these cities, and there were no cultivators passing by. Therefore, Wu Qi was too lazy to get close to these cities, so he just ran straight past them. Days went by, and Wu Qi kept running in the wilderness. As he ran, every time he stepped on the ground, his feet would sink heavily into the ground. The purple mist around him was rocking, attracting and intertwining with the purple mist that rose from Pangu continent. Gradually, Wu Qi had an illusion that he had become one with Pangu continent, and that his heartbeat and the flow of his blood were fused with the continent. On this particular day, on the 7th day after he entered the Mi province, while he was still running, he suddenly lifted his foot up, and when it touched down, he stomped forcefully on an underground energy vein. The energy vein trembled, and Wu Qi felt numb all over his body. The frequency of his heartbeat and the vibration of his muscles coincided with that of the energy vein. His body suddenly turned blurry, and the scenery before his eyes changed abruptly as countless lights and shadows flashed past. His body became heavy and then light. Suddenly, Wu Qi realized that he had come before a lofty mountain. He tried his best to extend his divine will and look behind him. After a moment of calculation and comparison, he found that he had traveled nearly 1 billion miles with just one step. The distance was even greater than the space he could travel by teleporting with his strongest magic power. This is... Wu Qi was struck dumb. What was the origin of such a strange situation? Suddenly, various techniques of the true body of heaven and earth scripture rushed out from his spiritual ocean. Wu Qi hurriedly flipped through some of them, and found that it was a mystic art in the true body of heaven and earth scripture that was similar to the teleportation divine ability of immortals. It allowed him to move quickly by borrowing the power of the underground energy veins on Pangu continent, a divine ability unique to the experts of the human race, the Kwafu chasing the sun step. With the help of the natural energy veins on Pangu continent, as well as the connection between the underground energy veins, the supreme experts of the human race could cross the territory of thousands or even tens of thousands of provinces with just one step, traveling from one end of Diyu dynasty to the other in a flash. Teleportation divine ability of immortals would consume their own immortal energy and energy essence, but a divine ability like the Kwafu chasing the sun step could travel completely by borrowing the power of the underground energy veins on Pangu continent, and would not consume any energy at all. As long as one was familiar with the direction of the underground energy veins on Pangu continent, as well as the condition of the energy veins under Baju province, one could travel accurately from one province to another with the Kwafu chasing the sun step. This was also one of the reasons why those truly formidable immortals were so afraid of the experts of the human race. As long as one was on Pangu continent, no matter how formidable an immortal was, he could never escape from the pursuit of the experts of the human race. After hastily reading through the essence of the Kwafu chasing the sun step, Wu Qi could not help but twitch his lips. Fairy Xiandai and Reverend Liang were really lucky. Perhaps, the reason why they were able to escape from King Baishan and King Zhangqiu's pursuit was related to Fairy Xiandai's marvelous divine ability, the true form of energy treading through air. Otherwise, how could they have escaped from the endless pursuit of the human experts? Wonderful! As long as I can find the complete map of Pangu continent, doesn't that mean I can travel through it at will? Wu Qi grinned, unable to restrain the joy in his heart. Suddenly, he threw his head back and laughed uproariously. According to the Kwafu chasing the sun step, among thousands of human warriors, only 1 or 2 could comprehend and master this divine ability. However, Wu Qi had obtained this mystic art after running for a long distance. While laughing delightfully, Wu Qi took a careful step forward. His body flickered again as he moved 3 million miles forward along a small energy vein under the ground, moving from the lofty mountain to another lofty mountain in the distance. This lofty mountain turned out to be an excellent cave abode. Using his chaotic divine eyes, Wu Qi peered into the ground and saw several dozens of energy veins intertwining at the foot of the mountain like giant dragons. Surging energies gathered together, transforming into pale purple immortal energy that rose up into the sky. Without any processing, this place was an excellent cave abode for immortals. But when Wu Qi spread his divine sense out, he found that just outside the lofty mountains stood a large city of the human race of Diyu. More than 100,000 warriors were living in the city. It was a first-class city. Perhaps no immortal would dare to build a cave abode here, unless he had the confidence to swallow the city in one gulp. Otherwise, who would dare to build a cave abode under the noses of the officials of the human race? Wu Qi could not help but shake his head as he glanced at the spirit flowers and rare herbs that stretched across the mountains. It was a pity that such a blessed land would be wasted. Exercising his chaotic divine eyes, Wu Qi followed the direction of the energy veins, and before long, he came to a small hill less than 3 miles tall. He glanced around, then waved both hands and performed a minor divine ability of heavenly laws. His body grew 3 miles tall as well, then he grabbed the hill and pulled it up. A muffled boom rang out as the hill was uprooted. Wu Qi clasped his palms together, unleashing an enormous magnetic force that crushed all the rocks on the hill into powder. With a wave of his hand, all the immortal stones found in an excellent energy stone vein, which was 3 miles tall and tens of miles in circumference, shot out into Wu Qi's sleeve. In those ordinary energy stone veins, one immortal stone could be formed from hundreds of thousands or even millions of energy stones. However, there was no trace of ordinary energy stones in the energy stone vein on this hill. Instead, it was filled with immortal stones the size of fists. Wu Qi counted and found out that there were a total of 1,200 immortal stones flying into his sleeve. With these immortal stones, as long as he could find a province city of the human race, he would be able to return to Zhong province through the teleportation formation. After collecting all the immortal stones, Wu Qi absorbed all the rocks and dust from the shattered hill into his body. The chaotic energy rolled up the rocks and dust, turning them into chaotic energy that spread throughout Wu Qi's body. This 7-foundation elevating technique does have some benefits, as I can absorb and refine everything under the heaven. How many energy stones and immortal stones have I saved? Wu Qi could not help but laugh. If I were to establish my own sect now, I wouldn't have to fight with my disciples for energy stones and immortal stones. While he was feeling complacent, a thunderclap suddenly came from behind a mountain not far away. In just a blink of an eye, over a dozen sword beams flew out from behind the mountain. At the forefront were 3 purple sword beams, which originated from the same sect, and behind them were 13 colorful sword beams that belonged to different sections. Among the 3 fleeing sword lights in front of him, 2 of them were dim and flickering. Clearly, they were heavily injured. Initially, the mountain was still over 100 miles away from Wu Qi, but in just the span of a few breaths, the sword beams had reached a place less than 3 to 5 miles away from Wu Qi. Among the 3 purple sword lights that were fleeing ahead, a woman's voice suddenly rang out from the undamaged sword light. "Fellow Taoist in front, please leave quickly. The ones chasing after you are Myriad Demons Cave's demon cultivators." Demon cultivators from Myriad Demons' Den? Are they very powerful? His divine will swept across the 13 sword beams. The strongest among them only had a cultivation base of peak stage nascent soul realm. As for the 3 fleeing sword beams, they were all early-stage nascent soul realm cultivators. Suddenly, a hoarse and unpleasant voice rang out from behind. "3 little girls, you can't even take care of yourselves, and you still want to save others? Hee, the great king's birthday is just around the corner, and he must capture you as a birthday gift. Don't run, you can't run away. Ha!" The demon cultivators in the 13 sword beams roared with laughter at the same time, and they suddenly sped up and rushed toward Wu Qi. Wu Qi's face darkened. He pointed a finger out, and a dark magnetic force enveloped the 13 sword beams. Miserable howls rang out as the 13 sword beams were dragged by a tremendous gravitational force, completely out of the control of the demon cultivators, and plunged headlong into a mountain in the distance. A series of bone-cracking noises echoed out, and the 13 demon cultivators who were laughing wildly just a moment ago had their bones broken and tendons torn, and even their nascent souls were shattered. The three fleeing purple sword beams halted hesitantly. Before long, they faded away, and three girls clad in long purple dresses landed in front of Wu Qi. They cupped their fists and bowed deeply to Wu Qi. "We are Luo Shui, Luo Yu, and Luo Ling. Thank you for saving our lives, Senior." Wu Qi raised his head and gave the three girls a glance, and could not help but praise in his heart, "What a beautiful pair of twin sisters." That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.